across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Happy August to you folks. Haven't been on air since August began. How on earth is it already August? And I don't know. I'm very, very, very confused because the gangs have not been smashed yet, which is why the government's big announcement today is another £100 million. I think they're calling it an investment, God bless their souls, in tackling the smuggling gangs. We will be talking about that quite a lot because I have a funny feeling I'm going out on a limb here. I don't think it's going to work. But don't tell Yvette Cooper because I don't want to ruin her Monday morning. She's just busy ruining everyone else's. Anyway, very big welcome to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. We are the Home of Common Sense, and whether you listen on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watch on YouTube or on your connected device, it is fantastic to have your company. Don't forget, if you miss anything of the show, you can go to my YouTube page. We have very cunningly called it the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. It does exactly what it says on the tin, and if you subscribe, you will never have to miss a thing. So coming up in this hour, we are going to be talking about the government vowing to push for a major new crackdown on people to smuggling gangs by investing, they say, £100 million in border security. The funding is said to support the pilot of the new one-in, one-out returns agreement between Britain and France. It's due to begin this Thursday. Good luck with that, everybody. Other efforts to crack down on small boat crossings continue. This comes, of course, as official figures show more than 25,000 people have arrived on small boats so far in 2025, up on last year in the same period. I know. We're all surprised, aren't we? Also, Keir Starmer has suffered a fresh backlash from Labour MPs and indeed anyone with any ounce of morality, conscience or sense over his decision to recognise a Palestinian state last week after Hamas, what a surprise, praised the move as one of the fruits of October the 7th. Labour MPs, families of hostages and campaigners against anti-Semitism have called on the Prime Minister to delay any recognition of Hamas of a Palestinian state. Oh, same thing, by the way, until Hamas has released all of the remaining hostages. And we'll be showing you some of those harrowing, absolutely harrowing videos of two of the hostages held in Gaza. I have to say, amazingly, neither of those emaciated figures made it onto the front pages of any newspapers. Isn't that strange? Plus, the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has warned that Britain risks a repeat of the grooming gang scandal or last summer's riots if police do not share the ethnicity or immigration status of dangerous suspects. This after claims that police were basically not giving full information after it was alleged that two asylum seekers were involved in serious sexual crimes. Plus, the porn star Bonnie Blue. Yes, lots of men now pretending they've got no idea who she is to their wives right now. Good luck with that, chaps. She and Channel 4, indeed, are facing a backlash over her Channel 4 documentary, 1,000 Men and Me. It's about how she slept with more than 1,000 men in 12 hours, as companies have refused to run adverts alongside the programme. Oh, I wonder why. Anyway, we'll be talking about that and plenty more besides. Do get in touch. I want to hear from you in particular, but as you know, you are welcome to call in on any topic at all. But with the government announcing yet another major new crackdown on people smuggling gangs with a £100 million boost for border security. It's all part of the one-in, one-out deal. As we are facing all these protests outside asylum hotels, I want to know simply, what is your reaction? Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. You can text on 87222, or you can get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. You know all the rest of it. And I can't wait to get your calls on the air. Delighted to say, as always, on a Monday morning, I know you're always chuffed to hear from him as well. Commentator Sam Armstrong joins me. Morning to you.
Good morning.
It's terrifying to me that you are a voice of common sense and and morality, given the world we are living in. But you are.
Well, it's a bleak day on August, and I think the weather suits the climate of politics.
Yeah, watch out for the winds today. Up north. There we are. That's my weather warning. This is the thing. Could the BBC and everyone else, could they just limit it to, it's going to be windy, strap it down?
I thought
Chop
we were
it down, you know,
I thought we were meant to
bring the trampoline in or whatever it is you have to do.
I thought we were meant to be in the midst of global warming gone mad. This summer, that started promisingly, has just descended into what it always is, a good old-fashioned British summer.
Well, good thing we did actually get a bit of a summer earlier, because I think we did about 4 seasons yesterday where I was, but there we are. I just alternated sunglasses and umbrella, sometimes both. Right, should we talk about... this is the thing. I've got to be honest with you, were I an asylum seeker, OK, for some basket case, godforsaken country like Afghanistan or Somalia or many of the other countries that people come from, I'm still thinking, even without all the benefits and the asylum hotels and everything, I would stay in France just for the weather over coming to Britain. But apparently not. They would much rather be in an asylum hotel, you know, somewhere in England instead. You know, choices that people make, apparently. But we've got this announcement from Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, of yet another border security boost. The government's vowing another major crackdown on people smuggling gangs. So we've got 100 million quid going on that. They've said they'd managed to get a load of dinghies that would have had, you know, 60 people on each of them. They'll just make some more dinghies and sell those. They're also clamping down, and I like this story actually, on universities using foreign students effectively to make a load of money, knowing these foreign students are going to pay them $9.5 grand in fees and then never actually turn up. They're actually going to claim asylum. Many actually foreign students, they come here, they do their course, they get their degree, and then about 5 minutes before their degree is over, turns out I need to claim asylum. I mean, these are completely bogus claims. They should be instantly thrown out of the country, no question at all, marched to the door. But at least the government is trying to crack down on that. I would like a better crackdown on that. I would simply say any foreign student who claims asylum at any point before, during or after their university education, that there is like a £100,000 fine for the university for each one, because that would focus their minds on only having people who they know are genuine. But is this, silly. Is the £100 million border security boost going to do anything, Sam?
Julia, there are times where I'm amazed our listeners keep tuning in to us, because for the last...
Don't say that!
Well, I will say that.
I love you.
Because for the last 3 years, we have had announcement after announcement after announcement, exactly the same, by a political class that must think we have been on the planet Zog for the past 3 years. You keep saying this. There has been a weekly crackdown on migration for the last 150 plus weeks, and yet with our own eyes, what do we see? Streams and streams of people flooding into the country through every single nook and cranny, and they are coming in not just in the boats, they're still coming in the lorries, they're coming in as students, they're coming in on work visas. We can see it with our eyes. We can see the rising crime, and I'm afraid that illegal migration, notwithstanding the crime of breaking into the country in the first place, does lead to an increase in crime. We can see it when we try and get a GP appointment. We can see it when we try and get our kids into the school, and even when they are in school, they turn up and they're in a class with a bunch of people, none of whom speak English, and that hard-pressed reception teacher is having to run around with a translation app on their phone. We can see it everywhere, and yet they think that, oh yes, this time we'll send out Angela Eagle with a nasally voice, and she will announce £100 million for new tactic. It is...
I don't know what that accent was, but well done.
A load of absolute...
But the key thing here is that no one thinks that anyone in the Labour Party, Yvette Cooper, Angela Eagle, Keir Starmer, anyone in this government actually thinks cracking down on this is something they should do. They're doing it, or pretending to do it, or going through the motions of pretending to do it, because they know that other people are cross about it. They're looking at the polls, they're looking at the focus groups, and they've realised even some of their Labour voters, particularly in lots of those seats they scraped into last election, which they're very likely to lose to Reform, that they're playing along. They don't actually think that mass uncontrolled legal immigration is a problem, and they don't actually think that mass uncontrolled illegal immigration is a problem. They don't really think it's a problem, which is why we have such difficulty. And again, most of the last Tory government didn't either. You know that, and I know that. Paid lip service to it. But here's the thing: if you don't do anything, look, this is like if your other half is having an affair, saying, I really don't want to have it, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have done it. Well, the proof is in the pudding. Don't have an affair. I mean, it's really easy to not have it. I have a funny feeling that if you or I, and frankly most of our audience, if we were in charge, we would be able to stop those boats. It's the willingness and to use the ability. We have the ability to stop people coming to this country. We have the ability to get rid of them. We choose not to do it. We choose not to change the law, make the law. They're able to change the law like that when they want to, and they choose not to do it, which means they don't really think it's a problem. And they do think that people who see the problem, talk about the problem, are far-right bigots. They think Reform are, they think people like Robert Jenrick and the Tories are, they certainly think you and I are, without a doubt, and they certainly think the people who are protesting outside Asylum hotels are. We saw more protests outside the Britannia Hotel. The Barbican, again, it's now spreading across the country. I discovered last week, as I mentioned on the show, that a local hotel near me is now an asylum hotel, and I'm sort of gathering information on that, and I'll report on that when I've got more information. We have like trouble outside hotels, and we're told, peaceful protests like the Britannia Hotel in Barbican. I mean, this is a posh part of town. I mean, this is zone 1 posh part of. I mean, I don't like the Barbican area much, but you're not talking in the sticks. And people they're having protests, and we've seen these protests at Canary Wharf as well, where they have people. It's largely women and children. They're doing protests, and then some idiots turn up. Yep. Now, often the trouble is actually when the counter protesters turn up, they bust in. Everyone saying, "We love having refugees here. We don't even live here. It's not even your opinion." But often the violence, such as there is any, or difficulties with the police, is often from the clashes after those people turn up to basically try and cause trouble at a peaceful protest by mothers and children.
Politics is, at the end of the day, about choices, and this government had a choice. It could either stop the literal pillaging of our country by an invading hordes that are arriving day by day, or it could do something different. And this is what it's decided to do. It has decided to find everybody that thinks that this is a problem, everybody that is concerned about the waiting lists, that is concerned about the crime, and it has decided to go after them instead. It has decided that if you choose to speak out on social media, your content will be blocked. Yep. If you stray out of the line too far, you'll be locked up for 31 months, like Lucy Connolly, former Conservative councillor. If you're a local mum and you decide to go and protest outside a hotel wearing pink, groups of mums, that the Metropolitan Police Service are going to turn up, they are going to push you out of the road, and then they're going to slap an order on you that says, if you turn up here again in the next month, we will arrest you on site. Where were those arrests? Where were those arrests when hordes of people marched through London every week, intimidating and persecuting British Jews? Yep. They were nothing to be seen. The police have all of a sudden discovered they've got powers. Yep. This is a government that was elected on the slimmest of popular votes. 32% of the vote, just 20% of the British public voted for them at the last election. And since they have been in office, they have been clamping down very deliberately, in my opinion, on any form of dissent that has caused...
Social media, on the streets.
Social media, the streets. If you're in a workplace, you're going to get sacked if you speak out about it. Everybody that's listening to this show knows that they have had to self-censor themselves because they know, and they have been told an unfailing, unequivocal message right from the top that if you speak out, we're coming after you. It is, in my opinion, a tantamount to a kind of dictatorial coup d'etat. And I apologise for putting it that highly, but I really think it is. If you are elected on a slim majority, basically because your opposition is splintered under our first past the post system, and when you get in, you clamp down on dissent, you do things to change the way people vote, votes for 16-year-olds, a number of things that Labour are doing to make it easier for themselves to get more vote. No doubt will make it easier for overseas people to vote at the next election. This is a government that has a plan, and that plan is to shut us up and to do whatever it takes to keep themselves there for as long as they can grip onto the wheels of power.
I think that may be their plan, and good luck with that plan. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to fall flat on their face. But as you say, it's very dangerous. It's very sinister. By the way, I was saying the Britannia Hotel, Barbican. There's no Britannia is the one in Canary Wharf. Apologies. There are so many of them. It's easy to get confused. But this is the thing. One of the things they want people not to talk about is the criminal link with migrants. And Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, has been very clear. He says, the figures that he has seen, bearing in mind he's a former Home Office Minister, and he's the Shadow Justice Secretary, that 40% of crimes crimes committed in the London area are committed by people of foreign nationality. Not all asylums, but of foreign nationality, but they do not make up anything like 40% of the population of London. They are overrepresented. But we also got a massive issue over that. I mean, 2 cases just in the last week or so, where we've got as a 12-year-old girl allegedly raped. And 2 Afghan asylum seekers have been charged in relation to the rape of the 12-year-old girl in Nuneaton. And now there's a big concern about inflaming community tensions. Yeah, do you think, and we're talking about, again, the 2 people who have been arrested are asylum seekers. Now, they're entitled, as everyone should be, in a proper democratic justice-based society, to the rule of law and to innocence until proven guilty. But these are active charges. We need to be careful. However, you can understand why people will be worried. And there's also a Sudanese asylum seeker who has also been arrested, living in a 3-star asylum hotel paid for by the government. According to the arrest, he's alleged that he attempted to kidnap a 10-year-old girl while she was with her father. Now, I'm sorry, there is something going on. These stories don't come from nowhere, and we don't know in these specific cases what's actually going to happen as a result. However, there is no doubt at all that people are seeing, I've certainly noticed in my area, the massive rise in crime that you see when an asylum hotel... I mean, the reason why I found out about the asylum hotel was because talking with neighbours about how people having bikes stolen, my bag stolen, people having break-ins. Lived in the same area for 19 years, and in the last year we've had two attempted break-ins. But I've never had one before. I mean, people start talking about this stuff. People notice it. We're not stupid. I don't know if they're linked, but I'd like someone to investigate whether they are linked.
Here's the thing. If the only way you can keep a lid on community tensions, if the only way you can keep people calm from going out onto the streets is to conduct a massive national conspiracy of silence in which details are hidden from the public on an industrial scale, then this country has already fallen. It is over. Look, we need, as a country, to be in a situation in which we can have a discussion about what is going on in our society broadly. That is the way that we have existed for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And it is only now that we have reached the stage as a society in which the truth, knowledge, basic data is not just for some reason kept quiet. It is considered by the authorities to be dangerous. It is considered dangerous for you, for me, for anybody listening to this to know the truth about what is happening on their own streets. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, then nothing ever will.
I can tell you a few years ago I was making a point on air about the increased criminality in all the countries, particularly in sex crimes, violent sex crimes against women in countries which had mass uncontrolled legal immigration. And I got an Ofcom complaint, and Ofcom said, we'll give you a chance. We'll give you a chance to have a look at, to answer this. And of course, I just responded with, no mainstream media at the time was covering any of this, but I got the official stats for, Sweden, Germany, France, Italy, Denmark, no, not Denmark, because they've been relatively sane on this, Austria. But I just got the official stats. And made sure that any report I found was absolutely based on official stats, and just responded with all of that. And it's like, and it quickly went away. It's like, sorry, well, Ofcom, you could have Googled the stats yourself, but the assumption that if someone says that, you must be lying. No. The statistics in other countries are there. And again, Denmark actually introduced one of the first countries to actually say, well, let's actually publish the nationality or the immigration status of the people who, and let's know. Because here's the thing, again, it's like economic benefits. If immigration is such a great benefit to us economically and diversity and justice-wise and everything, show us the stats that prove it. And if you can't show us the stats, and there are loads of stats showing the exact opposite, unless we are choosy about who comes here, people who want to make a life here, work hard, contribute, have skills that we need, want to integrate and assimilate. Welcome, thank you very much indeed, come and be part of our community, that's fine. But that's not where we are with, I would say now, the majority of people coming to this country. And it just seems to me to be, if you are scared of facts, look, it's the same as the trans debate. You can't talk about, it's the same as the climate net zero debate, shut down debate, do not allow dissent. Immigration for years, do not allow anyone to question it. And whenever someone tries to shut down debate, that's how you know that they don't have the facts on their side, because no one who's got the facts on their side is scared of a debate.
And you're right to be saying that this has been going on for years, and people in this country have tried concern, they have tried consternation, they have tried disappointment, they've tried writing to their MPs.
They've tried voting.
They've tried voting again and again and again for political parties that promise the world and deliver nothing. And then for Angela Eagle, I'm sorry to go back to that dreadful woman, to go on the television this morning and to have the audacity to say that anger doesn't get you anywhere. Well, I'm sorry, Mrs. Eagle, but the people of this country have tried just about everything else. They have tried again and again to use every lever available to them, and you and everybody like you has done nothing. So yes, they are angry, but that is more than justified.
And anger, but again, I've the same thing. We're also told don't look back in anger when people blow up our children at pop concerts, because that's how anger is a very legitimate and real human emotion, and there are times when it is absolutely appropriate, and I would say now it is, but need to keep within the law, need to keep peaceful. Don't give them ammunition. We're on the right side, they're on the wrong side. Don't give them ammunition. That's what I say. Look, I've got so much I want to talk about. I really, really, really want to get to Keir Starmer and basically, you know, telling Hamas, well done on October the 7th. Now you might get your Palestinian state, and those horrific videos of incredibly emaciated hostages. And also, we're going to bring 300 children and their families from Gaza to be treated on the NHS, because there is, I can tell you categorically right now, not a single child in this country waiting for any health treatment whatsoever. Not one child in this country is waiting for health treatment on the NHS. Of course they sodding well are. I wouldn't let a single one of those kids in. Not one. I'm really sorry. We'll pay for them to go to Qatar. Off you go to Qatar. They're happy to fund Hamas. They've got wonderful hospitals, probably rather better than ours. Qatar can treat them. Not a single one of those children, not a single one of their families should be brought to this country. Because I'm telling you right now, not a single one of them will ever go home. And every single member of theirs, every second cousin of theirs will end up living here. And we are insane to allow that to happen. We're going to talk about that coming up as well. Lots more coming up. We're going to take your calls. I'd love to hear from you on all the topics we're talking about. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Talk.
people are sent in from the left, from Stand Up to Racism, from Antifa, with their masks to agitate people. The migrants have been throwing things out of windows or laughing at people. We had it in Portsmouth just several weeks ago where there was, I think, 3 arrests. It wasn't a protest I was at. However, the migrants were out the window throwing eggs at the protesters, and that's what sparked everything off. So we've got to remember that there is agitators out there that will spark these things, but I need people to remember to stay calm at all times because it takes the story away.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk, the Home of Common Sense, coming up to 10:28. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong's still here. Let's get straight to the calls and the texts and tweets coming in, particularly about the government announcing yet another major new crackdown on people smuggling gangs. £100 million boost for border security. I mean, I don't think it's new money even. It's just money the Home Office has got, but they're going to spend it on border security. Could have thought that a year ago. Maybe the Tories could have thought that about 10 years ago. What's your reaction? 0344 499 1000. Some of your texts and tweets coming in. Kevin says, how does money help when there's a taxi service crossing the channel? Oh, they're probably paying the people smugglers at this point, Kevin. Badley says, I will believe it when I see it. Plus, have seen videos of them being smuggled in hotels, trying not to be noticed. Yeah, because send them in. Well, I mean, certainly in some villages, and we've seen this in Ireland as well as in the UK, where they literally bus in 100 migrants to a small sort of coastal village overnight so people can't protest. Ben says, my reaction is just another cover-up, and more will be covered up regarding the numbers and the crimes. Stacey says, what a complete waste of money. And Sally says, just use the Navy to turn the boats back. Simple. It worked for Australia. Carl says, smash the gangs mean we ain't doing anything. Let's go to Herbie, who's on the line in Harrow. Good morning to you, Herbie. How are you?
Very well, Julie. How are you today?
Very well, thank
Julia,
you.
If we can't see what's happening, the amount of people coming over, no matter whether it's by boat, lorry or whatever, it's an invasion, and they are going to become the majority, and we're going to become the minority, and it will be takeover time. Can't people see this?
Well, look, I mean, in terms, look, we're talking tens of thousands of illegal migrants,
Exactly.
but we are also talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands legal migrants, but from countries, some of which do not share our values and belief in law, equality and things like that. We have an issue. And anyone saying these things is told, well, you know, you're a terrible human being for even thinking it.
Well, sorry, that's not true, because what's happening is their culture is not our culture. They're trying to take their culture into our way of life, which isn't working. They're going to change our way of life completely because they'll be the majority. Once you become the minority, you've got a problem. And the problem is that the government is too afraid to do anything about it. Think about us for a change. Stop worrying about them. Give us the opportunity that we need. It's our country. We live there. We work there. We pay for everything. Stop ruining our lives.
Well, indeed. I mean, again, this is more of a legal migration issue, but I mean, I think the criminal threat is more of a legal migration. But exactly, you would never say, like, oh, you know, the French should become a minority in France, or the Germans should become a minority in Germany, or, you know, or the Saudis should become a minority in Saudi Arabia. You know what I mean? You wouldn't. Oh, Pakistanis should be a minority in Pakistan. Well, they wouldn't allow that to happen. So why do we allow it to happen?
Because we've got a spineless, a wasteful government that really doesn't care about the British people. They're worried about everything else, but not in our interest. For God's sake, look, Julia, there's trouble rising up every day.
Yeah.
I said before, we are going to head for a disaster, which I'm afraid is going to happen. Civil war is just around the corner. I think people have had enough. I'm sorry to have to say that, but I think it's facts. It's actually...
The people have had enough. I agree with you that things could turn very, very nasty. I don't want them to turn nasty. I want the people in authority to wake up sooner than that. But I can also understand how it could happen, and that's the terrifying thing. And we will have sleptwalked into it, other than stations like ours trying to go, hey, there's an issue, we need to deal with it. Herbie, thank you for that. Robert's on the line. He's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Julie. Yeah, I was there. I was at the Barbican Thistle on Saturday. My cousin Tony, she organised it.
Yeah.
But I just want to tell you what happened and the build-up to it.
Yeah.
Now, these people, you described it as it's not a posh area. This is South Islington, which is Clerkenwell. This it's really and truly, the hotel's nowhere near the Barbican.
Yeah.
It's between Old Street and City Road.
Yeah.
Now, there's two types of protesters against the migrants. There's those who don't live anywhere near a hotel, up and down the country. They think that it's a liberty that the government's doing. Then there's those like the ones in the Thistle who are affected. Now, this is based on 41 migrants being charged with 91 charges. They've turned it into a no-go area. There's a little square there called King Square, where Wheel was on Saturday. The night before, I've got to tell you this, that Jeremy Corbyn went online and he urged all his left-wing supporters to attend it. He named it. He said where it was. When they turned up, now, my cousin, she walked the course with one of the Gold Acts. That's one of the top policemen the day before. And it was very, very well organised. I mean, it really was, and the police were brilliant.
And they organised it with the police knowing, and it was a peaceful protest.
And then all of a sudden, there was coaches of anti-for protesters, and it was quite scary. And at one point, they was just goading. The migrants are looking out the window and just goading the residents. Yeah. In the end, the policemen sent someone up there to get them away from the windows. But they all had masks on, but they didn't have the full. They all had like surgical masks on. Yeah. There was every Tom, Dick, and Harry left wing represented there. Yeah. Flags flying all over the place. Yeah. But I thought this was Jeremy Corbyn. He incited this even worse. He didn't turn up himself. Diane Abbott was there. He didn't turn up. Now, these are people who's been mugged. They've had their children accosted locally. Yep. There's a lovely park there in King Square. They can't go in because all the young girls and the mums are being accosted. Now, this has been going on for a hell of a long time. But to be honest with you, the police were brilliant, and they was just protecting the residents.
I'm really glad to hear that. It's encouraging to hear that. I'm wondering if those police officers on the ground agree with the residents.
No, I'll tell you, afterwards they came up and they were shaking hands with all the residents. And you know what? When everybody went home, the residents stayed and they cleared up all the mess in our square. The bit where the Antifa mob was, it was disgraceful. There was about 3 or 4 buses bust in.
Yeah, that tells you everything. That tells you everything. Robert, thank you so much. Really good to hear from someone who was actually there. You say, family member actually helped to organise that. Thank you. Very different perspective from what we're often seeing in the media. Thank you for that call, Robert. 10:35 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear actually from a Reform London Assembly member, Alex Wilson, about this border security boost and these protests at asylum hotels, particularly in London and around the country now. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back. 10:37 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to our next guest, Alex Wilson. He's a Reform UK London Assembly member and joins us now to talk about this latest crackdown, major crackdown on the people smuggling gangs announced by the government today. Another 100 million quid for border security. Very good morning to you, Alex.
Good morning, Julia.
Is it going to work, this one? I think this is this week's. There's been one virtually every week for, I don't know, years. Is this one going to be the one that works?
I sincerely doubt it. So, yes, £100 million. That's, of course, on top of the over £500 million that we've given to the French to encourage them to take some action, which I think the only time they did was when BBC film crew were watching them. The rest of the time...
They put their chains down briefly, slashed one dinghy, and then went back to lunch.
Back to and back to normal and back to normal levels of complete inactivity. So, no, this isn't going to help at all. It's a gimmick. I think, if we're going to get on top of this problem, which we know is a huge problem, I think we need to declare some sort of national emergency over it, because the numbers coming across and then the impact that's having, and we'll probably talk about the hotels and the protests shortly. To stop it, you have to address the pull factors. Fundamentally, Keir Starmer can talk about smashing the gangs all he likes, but all he's doing is smashing the records. We've had, over 25,000 boat crossings already this year. It's a record for this point in the year by some way. And it's because of the pull factors. Because people come here, they cross illegally, and they are then put up in these hotels. They are given free NHS healthcare, dentistry, board and lodgings,
mobile
all of that.
Phone. Nice,
Mobile,
cheap, cheap cinema tickets, you name every single thing. When this is it, again, you're never going to get rid of the smuggling gangs. There's too much money involved. And we know a lot of the time, they're actually, the immigrants, they come here, they know they can work. On the black market, they deliver Uber Eats and all of that, or they'll find something in a kitchen somewhere. And the organised criminals, they kind of pay back their journey to the criminals that way. They're kind of sort of almost enslaved, but willing, because they have chosen to do that at the end of the day, coming from a perfectly safe country in France where they're living in makeshift camps in tents. So of course the life here is better. Unless we're going to do that, unless we're going to get them out, not just out of hotels, but out of any sort of, accommodation among the rest of us where they can walk freely and do whatever they want freely, whether that is working illegally or committing crimes or just being, fake asylum seekers, because most of these people are economic migrants. You know that, I know that, everyone knows that who's paying attention. We're not going to stop those pull factors. What would have to be done? What would Reform do if Reform did win the next election, assuming we've still got a country left to have an election in? What would Reform do?
Well, the first thing you have to do is make it absolutely clear that anybody who crosses illegally is not going to be allowed to stay. And so the processing needs to be much quicker. But following processing, deporting needs to be much, much quicker. And if your first act on entering this country is to break the law by coming in illegally, then what does it say about how you're going to treat this country if you're allowed to stay? It's out of control. It's the pull factors, as we've said, and because they know that once they get here, the chances of actually being removed are so minuscule that it's absolutely worth taking that risk to come across. But
hold on a minute. Unless you build massive detainment camps and you literally intern them, and there'll be, there's 100,000 plus who are still here. Now, Labour say they are making much more inroads into actually processing these people. But I'm telling you what they're doing. They're processing them and then saying you can stay. And they're allowing, we have a far higher rate of acceptance. So, lots of people who've been turned down in 5 different European countries will get here and then be able to stay. We let them stay, and then, of course, they're off the official asylum books. We're just paying for their accommodation and their benefits for the rest of our lives, but it doesn't show up as a thing.
Then the burden falls onto the relevant local authority. And, of course, local authority budgets are massively overstretched as well.
No, it's all paid for by us. It's all paid for by working Brits.
Exactly. There's no such thing as government money. There's no such thing as council money. It's all taxpayers' money, and one way or other, we're picking up tabs. So what we have to do to get a grip of this is to reduce the numbers coming in, and to reduce the numbers coming in, we need to reduce the incentive. The gangs will operate, whatever. We've seen that with how the police have approached drugs and other sort of organised crime over the years. Where there is demand for a product or a service, and in this case the people smuggling is a service, then there will always be supply to meet that.
Yeah.
And the way to deal with that is to tackle the pull factors, tackle the demand, stop the incentives for coming.
OK. We know certainly there is a lot of anger growing about not just illegal migrants coming to this country, not just the cost of them being in asylum hotels, but the impact on local communities. We've had a number of allegations of crimes. We've had a Sudanese asylum seeker living in a 3-star hotel who's been arrested on charges of attempting to kidnap a 10-year-old girl. We've got 2 men charged, actually already charged by the police, again, still innocent until proven guilty, but over an alleged rape of a 12-year-old girl. People are getting more and more aware of the criminality aspect of these people who are coming, and there have been plenty of proven cases where they've gone through to the courts of people who've come to this country, again, the vast majority from Afghanistan, from other countries which are, where have a very different attitude towards women and girls than we have here. And we are seeing the criminality on the streets. Young women and girls are being the most affected, but just general levels of criminality, illegal working, you name it. What do you make of the protests at various hotels? It started, we became, I think, media aware of it at the Bell Hotel in Epping in Essex. We've been talking today already about there's the Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf. There's the Barbican Thistle in Barbican, London. I mean, many different protests. Often, the pro-asylum, pro-refugee protesters turning up, being bussed in. What do you make of those protests?
Well, the 3 highest profile cases that we've heard about and been talked about in the media, where there have been these hotel residents, for want of a better word, that have been involved and accused of or charged with really quite horrific sexual offences. The Epping, which, as you rightly say, kind of triggered the whole media and public awareness of the hotels and the protests associated with that. So Epping, the case in Warwickshire, which you mentioned, and the case in Stockport with the attempted kidnap of a 10-year-old girl. These are horrifying cases, but these are only the ones that we know about and the ones that are talked about. What we need to have a much clearer understanding of other cases that are going on, because there seems to be a pattern building up here, and it's no wonder that people are getting scared, getting worried, and getting angry, and wanting to stand up and say, well, hang on, we need to protect our own kids from this. And that's why people are protesting. The vast majority of people that are taking part in these protests are local residents who are concerned about the impact on safety for their communities. And yes, there may be some unsavoury characters that turn up. Far more of those are coming from the far left and deliberately goading some of these local residents, and that's where the clashes are happening by and large. But fundamentally,
and again, the people turning up in masks are usually the people who aren't up to any good.
Absolutely. I'm generally not keen on face coverings in all sorts of areas, and certainly in protests. If you're turning up tooled up, masked up to take part in a protest and goad local residents who are just trying to stand up for their community, they're the problem, not the locals who are just wanting this to be sorted out.
Do you have any trust and faith in the police? Caller, we said Robert, the Barbican Thistle on Saturday, he says the police are actually really fair and really good, but we've got lots of allegations of 2-tier policing, 2-tier justice.
We have to be able to have faith in the police. The police are there to operate policing by consent. They need the trust of ordinary, hardworking, law-abiding folks to do it. But the way that some of these protests, and not just these protests, the way, for example, the Palestinian protests have been policed over the last 2 or 3 years, leaves a lot to be desired. We need the police to be able to act without fear or favour, treat everybody the same. And at the moment, I don't think that's always the case. And people need to be able to stand up and criticise that as well. What we've seen, it feels like we're having a far greater degree of kind of censorship online, and people's comments about these protests and the way these are managed are being hidden, and perhaps falling foul of the delightful Online Safety Act. Mm-hmm. And we're not living in a situation where we have genuine free speech and genuine without fear or favour policing.
Absolutely.
Someone's got to stand up for it.
I'll tell you what, who's definitely thinks she's got freedom of speech, and that's Jess Phillips. She's the Women and Girls sort of Safeguarding Minister at the Home Office. She has sort of added to the insult and injury of the Science Technology Secretary Peter Kyle last week in an interview on Sky, talking about how defending the Online Safety Act, how when Nigel Nigel Farage said that if Reform get elected, Reform will scrap it in entirety. And he'd said, look, he's basically, he's on the side of the likes of Jimmy Savile, and prolific paedophile abusers like him would have been using the internet if it had been something in their day. Well, Jess Phillips has doubled down on that, and she said that Nigel Farage, your party leader, would enable modern-day Jimmy Saviles by scrapping the Online Safety Act. What do you say to that?
Absolutely outrageous accusation, and I don't think we are going to take any lectures from a party whose figures who did everything they possibly could to block a proper, full, open inquiry into the child rape gangs. They are not in the position to moralise over this. Absolutely not. But the Online Safety Act, I think, probably started with the best of intentions, about protecting children from harm, whether it be through access to hardcore porn or suicide websites and all that kind of stuff, but fundamentally it's not working. Those who are tech savvy enough will find a way around through VPNs and that sort of thing. Those who are not are now being put at extreme risk of putting your personal details into a website that you may not know if it's legitimate or not, and there's a huge potential risk for privacy and data loss and that kind of things. And also the censorship. We're seeing broadcasts of parliamentary speeches talking about the rape gangs are now being censored as age-appropriate or inappropriate content. It's ridiculous. So it may have started with the best of intentions, but it certainly hasn't been implemented like that. And I think we need to start again and look at other ways that we could perhaps achieve
Alex Wilson.
Safety and protection.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Reform UK London Assembly member Alex Wilson there. Quick response from Sam Armstrong. Obviously, you're at the Free Speech Union. It's a big issue for you.
Yeah, well, if Nigel Farage is enabling modern-day Jimmy Saviles, what is Jess Phillips enabling when she refuses week in, week out to call a full, proper inquiry into grooming gangs?
Yeah.
Who is she enabling?
Yeah, exactly. And it's happening right now. 10:49 is the time. We're going to go to a break. Then we're going to be talking, actually, you mentioned, hardcore pornography. We're going to be talking about the big backlash. I think a good thing, backlash over Channel 4's documentary about Bonnie Blue. And if you're sitting there pretending you don't know what she is and what she did, no one believes you. That's up next. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
When you reflect upon this, the main question to ask is, do protests actually work? And the answer is yes. So I would take the key example of the suffragettes movement, for example, early 1900s, which started off as small-scale protests and led to great change for women and women's rights.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 10:52 is the time. Let's talk now about Bonnie Blue. No, I didn't think I'd be doing that, but she's a, what would they say, porn actress? I think we should use the word. I think we should use the word prostitute and be a bit more honest about what it is. But Channel 4 have seen advertisers ditch them over their documentary about Bonnie Blue. She is a, quote, performer, and the title of the documentary, it came out last Tuesday, is 1,000 Men and Me, the Bonnie Blue story. And basically it tells the story of how she, you know, in her OnlyFans account, basically had sex with 1,000 men in one day. Lovely. Not surprisingly, a lot of advertisers said when it went online, we'd rather not be associated with that. Isn't that a good thing? Advertisers actually understanding that's perhaps not a good thing to be associated with? Well, let's talk about this with Jo Bartosh. She's assistant editor at The Critic. She's also the co-author of the utterly brilliant and terrifying new book, which I've already had an advanced reading of, called Pornography, that is out in October. A very good morning to you, Jo.
Hello, lovely to be here.
I do want to mention a book of that. Well, I'm sorry, I've left us very little time. Apologies for this. But just tell us what this Bonnie Blue porn documentary was actually, what it showed and why the advertisers were unhappy.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite explicit. I mean, to me, I think the most troubling thing wasn't actually the fairly explicit sex scenes, which were shown. It was just what a sort of an emotionally empty, morally moribund porn zombie that woman is, and indeed all of the men who use her as well.
Well, yeah, she says she's not being used. She gets millions. Wasn't she on OnlyFans making £1 million a month?
Yeah, I know, which sort of begs the question, why does she need the support of Channel 4 to do a largely uncritical documentary? I mean, you know, they didn't sort of look into the harms that she was doing in any significant way. They didn't interview any of the men who were using her. And I do say using, I mean, essentially, you know, they put their penises inside her for 45 seconds and called it sex. I mean, you know, it's absolutely grotesque.
I mean, lucky her. I have to say, I mean, you are just reducing yourself to just, I'm sorry, you're just a number of holes at that point, aren't you? You're not a human being in any meaningful way when you're doing that. She says she's one of those young women, and we see this lots of young women who say, oh, well, I'm putting myself to university with OnlyFans. You know, I'm just, you know, masturbating or talking dirty, or I'm stripping, or what, I'm getting loads of men are paying me money. I'm empowered. It's my body. You're just Mary Whitehouse in with a different haircut. What's your problem, prude? That's what a lot of those young women think, and that's what Bonnie Blue would think.
Yeah, of course. You know, at their age, I may well have thought the same. I think.
And then we grew up.
Exactly. And then you sort of realise, oh God, no, actually, it's not just sex. It's actually sort of pretty fundamentally changing what it is to be human if you do that to yourself.
Why do you say that?
Well, I think what we are seeing now is a generation of young men in particular who are bonding with what they see on screen, and young women who think they are no more than, well, as Bonnie Blue herself says, a whole. And I think that's fundamentally destabilising. I think it sort of creates a real disjuncture between the sexes. I think it's what people are essentially now beginning to form even their identities on. I think a lot of the trans movement actually is informed by pornography as well. And I think, you know, when it comes to the government sort of panicking around Andrew Tate or around, you know, lessons on consent or any of these things, they are meaningless if you don't tackle pornography, because you have there not just a teacher of sexual scripts, but you have something that is reinforced by orgasm. So, you know, that's more powerful than your sort of slightly embarrassing middle-aged teacher going in and saying, you know, it's you know, maybe you want to think twice before you do anal sex.
Yeah, this is just like the teacher saying, you know, just say no about drugs. Well, that didn't turn out to work out very well. But this is the thing, isn't it? It's turning sort of sex into a sort of an extreme sport. But and the young women, a lot of the young women think they're being empowered by it. They think, and again, I don't mean to be patronising, but yes, I'm 57 and I do know better than these. I'm sorry, you know, you live and learn over the years. And this is not them enjoying some casual sex, having fun and experiencing. This is them selling their bodies. And I don't think they often realise they're often selling their souls, because the evidence is really, really clear that the vast majority of women working in that world have either been sexually abused as a child or as a teen, they've had some bad experiences, they've been victims of sexual assault, and the rate of drug abuse, alcohol abuse and suicide is off the scale. So, and then they say it's the same as waitressing. If you use your body to go and carry a plate for someone, it's no different. Yeah, but I don't think you see the same numbers in people like me who work delivering pizzas.
No, the rate of PTSD is around about 70%, and that's comparable with combat veterans when it comes to the sex industry more widely. And we know that those who are drawn into it, will indeed be some girls like those who are groomed in Rotherham. It's it's girls who have been damaged, it's girls who have been hurt who are doing this. And I think you get the odd exception like Bonnie Blue, who I think frankly is probably a bit of a sociopath, who make it look as if it's okay. And the damage that she is doing by sort of pushing this model whereby girls are products and boys are consumers. Is quite grotesque, and we need to take action. So I'm really pleased that that companies have pulled out.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's people power. It's an awful lot of families, it's parents, it's mums saying, look, I don't want to use a product that wants to associate itself with this. We've seen money being used against advertising on radio or television stations. We've seen it being used on various products. This is to a certain extent people power working, isn't it? That they don't want to be associated with something that most people won't think is a good thing.
Yeah, I think it is. Having said that, when you look at the sort of numbers of men who use pornography, it is quite staggering. I think,
and women as well.
Oh yes, but they use it in very different ways. So, if you dig into the detail, yes, a lot of women use it as well, but men are far more likely to use it on a regular basis and for a long period.
I just want to say, your book. I was reading your book as a preview, and when the book is coming out, I want you and your co-author Rob Jessel to come on the show and have a really long conversation. I read your book. I had a knot in my stomach the entire time. The book is called Pornocracy, and it's about how pornography is changing our brains and is altering our society, altering our relationships. And if we don't pay attention and do something, we are in really serious danger. I think most parents have not a clue what their teenage sons and daughters are seeing and what they are expected to do when they are with a sexual partner. I think most people are completely blissfully ignorant, and that can't happen. We need them to know.
Yes, we do. Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, that's why I get so frustrated about the sort of the fuss around consent lessons, as if that's some sort of sticking plaster to what fundamental rupture of society.
Yeah. And everyone's a bit uncomfortable about saying things about it, but you need to talk to your children. I always say to everyone, go on Google, put the word porn, you probably can't unless you've got a VPN now, and then look at the first things and look at the first page. And when you see what comes up, call me, because you will be absolutely shocked. And by the way, put in a pre-order for Joe's new book, Pornocracy, out in October. It's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate that. I'm going to talk about that with Sam Armstrong up next. Love to hear your calls. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Very much appreciate you joining me. Let's tell you what we're going to be talking about today, whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. It's fabulous to have your company. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. He's Sam Armstrong, who's a commentator. He's joining us throughout the show. And very lively he is too, as indeed you are on the calls as well. Can't wait to get more of your calls on air. Don't forget, if you miss anything from the show, you can go to my YouTube page. What have we called it? How will you ever find it? The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Easy to find, easy to hit subscribe, and then you will never have to miss a thing. We're going to be talking about, by the way, the government vowing to push for a major new crackdown on people smuggling gangs. £100 million more of your and my hard-earned money spent on border security. And this is supporting, we're told, the pilot of the new one-in, one-out returns agreement between Britain and France. Remember, 50 in, 50 out. That's the beginning. They're planning to do it later. We're just going to end up with far more people in the long run, but there we are. It comes as official figures show that more than 25,000 people have arrived on small boats so far in 2025. That is, of course, yet another record. Well done, everybody. Also going to be talking about Keir Starmer suffering a fresh backlash from anyone sane and with half a conscience over his decision to recognise a Palestinian state last week. This after Hamas leaders praised the move in something that would surprise no one as, quote, one of the fruits of October the 7th. Yes, exactly. Families of hostages, Labour MPs and campaigners against anti-Semitism have called on the PM to delay recognition of a Palestinian state until Hamas has released all of the remaining hostages, thought to be some 22 still alive. We saw those horrific videos of two emaciated hostages from Gaza at the weekend, which bizarrely didn't make it onto the front page. You know, wrong nationality, eh? Wrong religion, I'm guessing, too. Plus, a prison officer has been sacked after refusing to refer to male-born transgender inmates, i.e. men pretending to be women, as she or her. Army veteran David Shockett told a safeguarding workshop, a part of his training, that he wouldn't be comfortable using a trans inmate's preferred gender pronouns and said he would use the correct ones. He also said he was happy to use plurals, like he would just say they and them. But no, that wasn't good enough. And he has been sacked. We'll be talking about that with Sam Armstrong, part of the Free Speech Union. Plus, government records extraordinarily. We're going to be talking later in the show that asbestos has killed 9 times more military veterans than there were British victims of the Taliban. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Oh yes, and new analysis shows that Labour's flight tax on airlines, which is of course for net zero, is going to add more than £50 to the cost of a family holiday within a decade, as if holidays aren't already more expensive. Anyway, all of that is coming up. I want to hear from you on anything we are talking about, but in particular about this latest major new crackdown on people smuggling gangs. So they want £100 million boost for border security. What is your reaction to that, particularly in the wake of these protests we've seen outside various different hotels around the country? I mean, 2 in London over the weekend. I said I've got an Asylum hotel. It turns out it's just, has been opened in my local area. They are everywhere. People have said we've had enough, not just over crime increasing, not just over the massive costs, but also over some of the most serious crimes. We've had an arrest and charges brought involving some serious sexual assaults on young girls in the last few days. And frankly, people can no longer keep their eyes closed to this. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text on 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Sam Armstrong can talk for free. He's here already. Very good morning once again to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. I do want to get more to, we didn't really get a chance to talk about Israel. And I also want to get your thoughts on what Joe Bartosh had to say as well, also in terms of, pornography and freedom of speech. But let's also just start, though, with this £100 million extra for border security. Again, it's Home Office budget. It's already there anyway. They're not able to stop the boats. We've seen 25,000 more people arrive in just over the first half of this year. We're looking for another record year. This is after they stopped the boats under Rishi Sunak and smashed the gangs under Keir Starmer. Clearly not working. As we spoke to a representative of Reform a little bit earlier, the point is you need to stop the pull factor. The pull factor is you're no longer going to be in a campsite in Calais in France being harassed by the French police unless or until you get on a dinghy, at which point they're saying bye-bye, adios, have a lovely time. You're going to get a 3-4 star hotel, you're going to get your food paid for, you can get a job on the black market working as a delivery rider, and you're probably never ever going to be deported. Until that changes, we're never going to stop these people coming.
Yeah, it's another 100 million quid on top of the 500 million quid, just another bung to the French to keep sending us the worst of the worst, all the people that they don't want, send them right over here. We've got a hotel room with their name on it ready. And look, the thing that I find most galling about this is the fact that in the Home Office, you could go into the Home Office now, you could go into the press office in that department, that the body there that is designed to tell us everything's going well, and they have a calendar, they call it a grid, and in there, every Monday for the next 6 months is a plan of all of these stupid announcements that they're going to make. And
this'll fool them this time.
One of these clowns, Angela Eagle or Yvette Cooper, who frankly, as Dominic Cummings basically says, are just puppets, they're just puppets. They send them out and they will announce, oh, this week we're banning mobile phones from, operating in wherever. This week we're making it a criminal offence to do this. It's already a crime. You're just not dealing with it. And, one of the reasons not dealing with it is there simply aren't enough prison spaces to arrest everybody that breaks into this country illegally. You're certainly not going to deport them back. And the public at home are just seeing this, and there does come a point, and after it's years, and when you're looking at a year in which you're looking at 50,000, maybe next year 60,000,
it's a huge number of people, and almost entirely young men of fighting age, and almost entirely from countries where they do not share our values. Everyone's got to stop pretending that people coming from Afghanistan, there are people coming from Pakistan, but Pakistan hasn't got a war on. You're not being persecuted in Pakistan.
These people are fleeing torture and war,
Sudan, Somalia,
which is why, of course, they leave the women and children at home to suffer it. But actually, just to make another point, it's actually really unfair to a lot of migrants that do come to this country, do contribute. I'll tell you this, there isn't a problem with the crime numbers of American immigrants, there isn't a problem with Canadians, Australians, Kiwis, the French, the Germans, the Italians, all of whom can come over to this country, can make a positive contribution, can never stick their hand out when they turn up, in fact are required to earn lots and lots of money and make this country a brighter and more vibrant place. We know the kinds of people we are talking about. We know, as Kemi Badenoch has said in the past, that not all cultures are equal. Some of the cultures...
You're racist. Oh, no, they're all exactly the same and all of equal value, including the ones where they throw gay people off towers. Look, no, they're all the same.
The disparity in countries that do provide this data accurately between the kinds of numbers that are committing sexual offences from certain countries and other countries are through the roof. We are seeing a disparity of 10 times
But it's with Sweden, they've made massive mistakes, and again, there's a reason why people are now, changing their policies in a lot of these countries, is when they actually had to issue leaflets to explain, that you're not allowed to just grab women in the street. These men are coming from cultures where if you are not covered up, you're fair game, and therefore a girl walking along in normal clothing, she's not wearing a bikini in the street, just normal clothing, they think they have the right to grab that woman to sexually assault. Bearing in mind, these are men coming from cultures where it's not a crime to rape and beat your wife. It's a right of a husband to rape and beat his wife. Why did anyone think there would be a problem, Sam? Why would anyone think that would be an issue for us?
It is a reality. I'm afraid it is a reality that in great parts of the Muslim world, whether that's in the Arabian Peninsula, whether that's in Afghanistan or Pakistan, that women who leave the house are required to have a male escort. It is not just because of their backwards patriarchal views towards women that they think they can't go out the house. It is also because it is dangerous. It is materially dangerous to be a woman in those countries.
I'll tell you,
but it's not the women from those countries that are coming here. It's the men.
I'll tell you also, though, my issue with women being covered up like that and the burqa and all that, and I see it every day in London. If you live in Central London, you see it all the time, is genuinely when a woman wears that, either she's been forced to do it or she's doing it it's usually a political statement, actually, of other than otherism. What they're saying is, I'm a good woman, don't rape or sexually assault me. Do her over there because she is not covered and therefore is fair game. And I'm sorry, that is the attitude. And people, I've spoken to enough women who cover themselves up, who Muslim, who wear their burqa, who have said that to me in phone-ins previously. I can assure you. Look, but we talked about that. Before we go on, I want to talk about Israel. But before we talk about that, we've talked about the hotels. We've had calls of people who've been at protests. People have had enough, and there is an element where people are. I'm very encouraged that people are going, no, up with this, we will not put. But it's very important these protests are peaceful. But again and again, we are seeing that actually it's the Antifa lot. It's the people who are bust in, who are trying to cause problems. As a general rule, if you've got a mask on, I don't want burqas, I don't want face masks in the street. I mean, you see these lunatic people on the train in the morning with their face masks on still. I mean, seriously, get therapy. Seriously, get therapy. And read some science as well. They don't work. But it's... But we've got the madness of that. The police should be clamping down on that. But once again, we've got this whole thing where, a lot of the media reporting of this is very unfair and very one-sided. And people are troublemakers. Even if we talk about women and children sitting around, some like the pink protests, they just turn up, they've got banners, and they're just very quietly protesting in their local area. And then we've had with the Online Safety Act, I know it's something you feel very strongly about. We've actually had clamping down on people's ability to even see some of these protests online. Yeah.
Julia, with the clampdown on free speech online, on social media, on Facebook, on X, on everywhere else, if you are not listening, if you are not watching a station like Talk, you are literally being sold every day a total and utter pup.
You're either totally unaware or you've got a completely skewed version of events.
But if you're listening to what is broadcast on other stations, you are told that this is basically a fantastic country that is getting better every day. You've never had it so good.
Diversity is our strength.
Diversity is good. We've been culturally enriched for the last 30 years. And the only problem in this country is a bunch of nasty, angry, far-right racists that are marauding around the country and making it very, very unpleasant for these beautiful beacons, these shining cities on the hill that are the hotels where we're supporting the rocket scientists and the doctors and the brain surgeons
that all arrived on dinghies.
That have all arrived on dinghies. And remember that most of them are women and children, even if they don't know that.
Yes, and a government minister did say that. He did actually say that when we can see for our own eyes. The stats are very, very clear about who they are. But this is the thing. We just had a conversation with Joe Bartosh, who's got a new book out, co-authored, called Pornography, and we're talking about Bonnie Blue and Channel 4. Now, you and I both freedom of speech campaigners. I think you're more of an absolutist than I am. But I mean, like the Online Safety Act is being used ridiculously, and every teenage boy has downloaded a VPN and is now seeing his porn as and when he chooses, as is everybody else. But what do you make of there's that balance between because it was supposed to be safety for our children, and I'm now very wary of anything. I'm someone who would have been in favour of these sort of things until we had lockdown, until we had that clampdown on freedom of speech we've had, and the clampdown we've had on freedom of speech over trans issues, over climate change and net zero. I'm now very wary of any clampdown for my safety. But I'm a mum as well. I am horrified by what is online porn-wise. If people want to see stuff that's about, I don't think it's a good idea that your average 13-year-old, 15-year-old, 6-year-old, 11-year-olds even, should easily, with 3 clicks of a button on Google, be able to see a woman being gangbanged and strangled. Call me old-fashioned, but I don't. So what do we do about it?
Yeah, well, I think you're right to compare the Online Safety Act to what's happening in COVID. And by the way, the same unit, Julia, that was spying on you during lockdown is now spying on those people, is now sending emails to Reddit and X saying that people shouldn't be allowed to talk about two-tier policing. So it's the same people that sold us all that nonsense on COVID are now trying to clamp down on free speech over migration. But look, you're not going to protect children by banning content in which an MP is talking in the House of Commons, literally in the House of Commons, about the child rape scandal, the gang rape scandal that we've seen in northern cities, or in fact cities all over this country, off X. Here's how you deal with it. It's really, really clear. No kid under the age of 14 should have a phone, pretty much of any variety, in my view. Kids up to the age of 16 should have dumb phones. They shouldn't be allowed to go onto smartphones. parents need to get laptops out of kids' bedrooms, put them in the sitting room, put them in the dining room, put them wherever you've got where you can watch them. Because I can promise you, kids are very, very enterprising. They're adventurous. They will get around it. The search rates of VPNs prove that you don't know it. And here's how you deal with disgusting, degrading filth that is the pornography that is routinely accessed by children in this country. You ban it. You ban it.
Strangling a woman shouldn't be legal.
I do not understand why it is legal in this country for people to be able to watch videos of women getting slapped around the face. I do not understand why it should be legal.
I'm sorry. That was the Olympics. The Olympics showed that to billions of people quite happily in the boxing final.
More madness, but when it is combined with sex, I think you're seeing something particularly dangerous. If you're showing sexual content with women being slapped, women being strangled,
spat on,
urinated on, and worse, that filth should have no place in our modern society. And our politicians...
Now people are going to be able to get hold of it. People say they'll go to the dark web. No, that stuff is available on page 1 of most porn sites. Oh, also, by the way, the barely legal thing, the whole incest. Huge percentage of videos on these porn sites are about incest. Oh my God! I mean, this is really scary.
And Julia, we have pretty successfully banned child pornography. So we actually have the technology. We actually have the system set up to ban this. We could wipe this with a simple write of a pen. We could solve so many of these issues because it is so bad, not just for the women who are subjected to this, not just for the future girlfriends that they have, but actually for young people, and it's leading to some bizarre consequences.
I think it's good for young men.
More than almost 40% of the youngest generation, Gen Z, at the moment are basically celibates.
I'm not surprised.
This is the least sexed generation ever. It's leading to bizarre consequences in which young men sit around watching filth online, never practicing it outside. It's going to lead to huge societal problems. The birth rate is going to collapse yet further.
Lots of this is in this brilliant book by Joe Bartos.
Just won't do it.
No, exactly. If no one wants to talk about it, it's all very, very uncomfortable. But we need to talk about it. It's absolutely cruel. Again, I've been saying, let your kids have a drink, let them go to the pub and meet other people and have a laugh. I mean, honestly, I've said, like, university, why are you all at a pro-Palestinian rally? Why aren't you just getting drunk and having sex like normal students do? What we did in my day. I mean, I really think they've lost the ability to get your kids, and that involves parents getting off their phones as well. That's really put your phones down. Every time I'm at a restaurant, or especially when you're on a holiday and you see a family, they're literally sitting at the table and everyone's on their phone. Breaks my soul. Buy a pack of cards. They cost about £2. Talk to each other while you play cards. Maybe find out what your kids' names are. That might be an idea. But most parents will say, well, my child's not looking at that. Your child has absolutely seen a woman being strangled whilst being gangbanged. Your child has seen that, and you can live in fantasy land that they haven't. But they have, and it has affected them, and it's going to affect all their future relationships. So it's time for a lot of parents to wake the hell up. Right, I want to talk about something else. We're going to come to this quite soon anyway, but I do also want to get your thoughts on this before we go to calls. The backlash against Keir Starmer after one of the senior leaders at Hamas, what a surprise, praised Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, and the Prime Minister of Canada as well. This is Ghazi Hamad. In an interview at the weekend on video, he said that the major nations planning to recognise a Palestinian state vindicated the group's terror attack on October the 7th. He said quite clearly it was one of the fruits of October the 7th. Now, people like you said that, people like I said that, like me said that, we know, what is my grammar there, and our audience as well. It's absolutely obvious. There were conditions put on Israel over Gaza aid and two-state solutions, not a single condition placed on Hamas. And then we've seen, and I think we can show them right now, videos of two hostages, one being held by Hamas and one being held by another group, but in Gaza. And I've got to be honest with you, I mean, absolutely horrible. First of all, there was this footage of Avitar David. He's an Israeli hostage being held by Hamas, digging his own grave, being forced to dig his own grave in the tunnels where he's been held for 2 years. And also then the family of the hostage, Rom Braslavsky, who's being held by Palestinian Islamic Jihad, showed a video of him, released a video of him looking incredibly emaciated, saying he was unable to even get off his bed. He was so emaciated. Neither of these pictures, neither of these images made it to the front page of the newspapers. The newspapers that happily used a picture of a child they claimed was still in Gaza and was starving, a Palestinian child who actually, interestingly, was actually in Italy, in a hospital in Italy, and has a congenital issue, nothing to do with malnutrition as a result of a lack of aid. They seem to just strangely not want to recognise this, but there's no doubt at all. Keir Starmer, Mark Carney and Emmanuel Macron have given succour to the Hamas terrorists and basically given them a reward for what they did on October the 7th, whilst ignoring the plight of the hostages.
Julia, I actually owe Keir Starmer an apology. A few months ago I described handing over the Chagos Islands to an ally of China and paying them for the privilege as the single worst act of statecraft in history. Because it wasn't. This was instead. What Keir Starmer has decided to do is to tell Hamas that you can get what you've always wanted, which is recognition as a government. You can send diplomats to the UN. You can jaunt around the world. You can come over here. If Israel fails to make a ceasefire with you by September. Yeah. And what do you have to do in order to make sure that Israel can't have a ceasefire with you? Well, you can not return the hostages that you still have underground. You can continue to launch terror attacks at the Israeli population. You can continue to subject your people to the most awful oppression that has ever been seen, as you have done for the last 20 years.
Steal the aid whenever you can.
Steal every
incentive, exactly. And then all of the media, again, this morning...
And you will be rewarded.
I do it just to goad me up. Listening to the Jeremy Burns and others on the BBC talking about basically being very critical of Netanyahu because he won't end the war. The war wouldn't be ended if I was in charge of Israel, I'll tell you that right now.
Julia, if a British hostage is taken, the British government has an absolute policy, which is it does not negotiate with terrorists. Not only do we not expect Israel to live up to that, we expect Israel to write basically a blank check to a terrorist organisation that kidnaps not one, not two, but several hundred.
But like 1,200, releasing 1,200 prisoners sort of per hostage. It is quite extraordinary. Look, we're going to be talking to an Israeli guest about that coming up in the next half hour. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But I particularly also want to hear your thoughts about the latest major new crackdown on people smuggling gangs, £100 million boost for border security. Is that going to make any difference when we've still got, as a lot of callers have identified, that pull factor of here's your 4-star Asylum hotel. Oh, yes, and here's your bike that you can steal to then work for free, illegally, on the black market, delivering food and things. I mean, for goodness sake, of course they're going to keep it on coming. That's why we've got a record number this year. Want to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Have you joined any of these protests? Would you join any of these protests? Do give us a call. You can text also on 98722. So you can get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. We'll get your calls up next. This is Talk.
Trump, I mean, I was thinking about this the other day, and I don't say this in a pejorative way because I love America and I love Americans. He's very, very American. He's telling Starmer there, you know, you got to do something about migration. You got to get your act together. He's telling us to stop our net zero insanity. Yeah. He's telling us to do something about crime and so on and so forth. Stop the windmills. Start drilling. And all of us in Britain, this is what we would love to stand there and shout in that idiot Starmer's face.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:28 is the time. Let's get some of your messages coming in about the government announcing yet another major new crackdown on people smuggling gangs. 100 million quid for border security. I mean, it's already money that we've already been taxed with. Or no, we're going to pay taxes in the future to pay the interest on the loan we've got for the government to pay for this. And it's not money like for France, but it's about our border security. And it's going to go along with that 50 in, 50 out plan that we've done that deal with France. But that, of course, we're told is just a starter plan. We're going to be taking legitimate asylum seekers, of course, who are then going to bring in their 50,000 relatives and second cousins as well. So we're going to end up with more people than the ones we've already got. But it's all going terribly well. Your reaction to that, though, Reece says, so the government decides the government needs more money to fix an issue the government created. It's a fair point, Reece. Thank you. Adrian says Starmer won't do anything about the situation. He doesn't want to stop the migrants. I think you're right. Ryan says £100 million. Yeah, sure. We've heard that lie before. Smash the gangs. Load of rubbish. Kelvin says this government is what Orwell warned us about in 1984. We're on the age of the Ministry of Truth and the Thought Police. And Timothy says could spend that money building secure camps for those already here. Absolutely. Housing them in such camps would make our streets safer and send the message to those planning on coming. Free hotels are closed for business. And Karen says, I've just ordered a new laptop. I've told PC World to invoice Downing Street. They're usually pretty good at picking up the tab. They can do it for illegal migrants, then surely they can do it for me. Well played, Karen, well played. Let's go to David, who's on the line in Sheffield and has given us a call on 0344 499 1000. Good morning to you, David. What do you want to say?
Yeah, I've got a couple of quick points. The first one is about the boats coming across the channel. If we want to stop everything, why can't the Royal Navy and the Coast Guard patrol in international waters outside of France? Yeah. Because the boats are obviously unsafe, they have caused deaths, and they're just not fit for sea. So what they could, in my opinion, international water, they could rescue them, save them from drowning, everything else like that, and take them straight back to the French ports.
But I don't think they're allowed. I think that's the key thing. They're not allowed to take them back to French ports. The French won't allow them to offload them. That's where you get the problem. That's what I'd love them to do.
Is, international law says you can. You take them to the safest place. But the second point is, and it's more important to me, I've been watching these horrific scenes in Gaza of people starving. For young children, for young children, it's different because it's formula and everything else like that. For the older children, I want to give you an example. During the miners' strike in 1984, we had to rely on food parcels, everything else like that. We didn't have any money to spend on food. And I have seen my wife, rather than our children starve, her go without food. Yeah. So what she's done, she's cut down on her meals, missed the meals, and put the food on the table. But every time I see one of these starving children, the mother always looks fit and well.
It's funny that, isn't it? Because actually a lot of the images we've been shown are actually of children who've got congenital long-term health problems, and they are being impacted by this. But again, their skeletal appearance, which is down to the congenital problem they've got, rather than the lack of food. Now we're told, and even people, our regular guest here, Andrew Fox, who's been out in Gaza twice, says, there has been hunger. There has been hunger. We're told that children have now died of starvation. What do you say to that?
Well, the thing about it is, I can only go on my personal experience, and when it comes to lack of food, which we did, and I suppose there's thousands of miners throughout the country, ex-miners, will tell you the same.
Yeah, but you weren't starving. People just had, less money. But you weren't starving.
We had no money, by the way. It's not less money, because the government stopped all us any benefits we could get, because they said we were getting paid off union. So let's correct that.
But you weren't starving.
But the point about it is, it limited the amount of food we got.
Yeah.
They're getting food off. We see them on television. They're dropping food in. Israel's.
But the argument is that there hasn't been enough food going in, and for a period of months there was almost no food going in.
I mean, this is the problem with the press today, and this is why you should be back on mainstream TV.
Oh no, I wouldn't want to do that.
The press today are saying that they haven't been getting food in, but yet if you watch that Israeli lawyer, she absolutely
Natasha Hausdorff,
the politician, by saying how much has actually gone into there, but it's been stolen. Now, there's a massive difference between stolen food and not getting enough food.
Oh no, that's the thing. We know that Hamas has been stealing food. Natasha, of course, is British. I think that's who you meant there. No, exactly. The key thing is we just don't see the full. We do not hear or see the full story, and that is absolutely the case. David, really appreciate your call. Thank you so much. 11:33 is the time. Let me tell you about another competition that we've got. Coldplay are back at Wembley this summer, and we've got a huge VIP prize up for grabs for one lucky listener. We're giving you the chance to win 6 tickets and a private box for you and your mates. If you want to include me, I'm very happy to join you. I'm very serious. If you've got a spare seat, I will come. It's on August the 22nd with full hospitality. Plus, we are chucking in 10 grand spending money, completely tax-free. Here's everything that you need to know.
10k for Coldplay. Play 10k cash for Coldplay with 10 grand in your hand tax-free plus 6 super hot tickets to witness Coldplay's sold-out Music of the Spheres tour from a VIP box at Wembley Stadium on August 22nd. Tickets, top tunes and 10 grand cash. Don't panic. Enter to play 10k for Coldplay at talksport.com/win and get ready for the feel-good gig of the summer for you and 5 mates. 10k for Coldplay is a joint TalkSport Limited competition run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio. See talksport.com for terms and conditions.
10k cash for Coldplay.
18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word Wembley to 83338 by the 4th of August at 11 p.m. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission or send your name and number by post to Coldplay Competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 7th of August. This is a TalkSport Limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com/win.
And breeze. Good luck with that competition. 11:35 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking to the former Israeli government spokesman Elon Levy about those horrific hostage videos, pressure on Netanyahu to end the war, and Hamas, of course, welcoming the likes of Keir Starmer and others, basically saying, yeah, we'll recognise the Palestinian state as a reward for the October the 7th atrocity. That's all coming up. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:37 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk right now about what is going on, not just in Israel, in Gaza, but also in the mind of our Prime Minister and indeed the mind of the French President Emmanuel Macron and indeed the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney in basically saying to Hamas, oh, well done for October the 7th. Let us reward you now by saying we will recognise a Palestinian state. Our own Prime Minister last week not even placing a single condition. 4 conditions on the Israeli government about whether or not they would recognise the Palestinian state, not one on Hamas. And what a surprise then that we did see that a senior Hamas leader interviewed on television over the weekend. This is Ghazi Hamad, a senior member, said that the recognition of a Palestinian state by these major G7 nations was one of the fruits of October the 7th. Let's talk to Elon Levy about this. He's a former Israeli government spokesman. He's also a host of the Israel State of a Nation podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Elon.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you. Just first of all, just talk about, we talked about a lot on the show last week, the madness, the insanity, the immorality of what Keir Starmer and Mark Carney and Emmanuel Macron did, but particularly, I think, Keir Starmer in saying he would recognise the state of Palestine by September, by the UN General Assembly, with not a single condition on Hamas. Were you remotely surprised that Hamas leaders have welcomed that?
I have to hand it to Sir Keir Starmer. It really takes skill to cock up so badly that a proscribed terrorist group is congratulating your foreign policy and welcoming it as a historic achievement. Hamas sees recognition of Palestinian statehood as a victory. It's calling it the fruits of October 7th. And if they think they're reaping the fruits of October 7th, then they'll sow another harvest. And that means that Starmer, Macron, Carney are encouraging Hamas to commit more barbaric atrocities against Israelis, to kill more babies, to kill more families, to rape more women, to take more hostages. They're telling them terrorism works. And I'm imploring them, before it's too late, understand the damage that you are doing and how you are emboldening Hamas to continue its terrorism instead of doing what it should be doing, which is laying down its arms, releasing the hostages, and letting this horrible war
Well,
end.
indeed. And Keir Starmer and many of his ministers, and we've seen the other world leaders say, well, obviously that too, but not a condition. And given also that perverse incentive that actually if there isn't a ceasefire, i.e. the hostages are not given back, then a Palestinian state will get recognised. I mean, it is quite insane, quite apart from the madness of the fact that, you can't recognise a state that who would rule it, who's in charge of it. It's not a democracy. We've got 2 different leaderships, 2 different organisations, neither of which held an election in the last 20 years. We've got, no precise borders. They're not even conjoined. There are so many arguments why this is not a thing right now. But it's very noticeable, not just our governments, but also our media, in particular the BBC, who's I've just given up all hope of the BBC now, that they seem to provide more. Well, they treat the 2 combatants as if they are equally morally equivalent. The Israeli government, the elected government of a democratic nation state, one of our allies, and a proscribed terrorist group in Hamas. They seem to treat them equally. When they talk about walking away from ceasefire talks, they seem to think that both sides are equally moral. It is quite obscene, isn't it?
I mean, remember the fundamental difference here. On one side, you have a democratic nation state, and on the other hand, you have a terrorist organization that launched an illegal war of aggression, took hostages, fought that war from a network of military tunnels underneath people's feet, refuses to hand back the hostages, hijacks aid, and refuses to surrender. This is a war that needs to end, but it's a war that has to end with Hamas accepting the inevitable, that it needs to leave power in Gaza and it needs to free the hostages. And another note about the British media, I've been shocked by how the British media has completely ignored the 2 horrific videos of hostages that Hamas and Islamic Jihad released this weekend. I thought I'd seen the worst of Hamas's psychological terrorism when they paraded dead baby coffins. I thought I'd seen the worst when they released a video of a dead hostage just days after his funeral. And I thought I saw the worst when they took a hostage and filmed him begging for his life at a ceremony releasing his friends. But now they took poor Eviatar David, who looks like a skeleton. He looks like an Auschwitz inmate. And they made him dig his own grave for the cameras. Islamic Jihad released a video of Paul Rombraslavsky. He's a hero. He stayed behind at the Nova Festival to try to rescue Israelis during the Hamas massacre. And they reduced him to a simpering rat of a human being who can't stop sobbing, can barely stand, says he can't breathe, can barely get up to go to the toilet, and is begging for his survival. Hamas and Islamic Jihad are systematically starving the hostages, and they need urgent medical attention, and they need to get out immediately. And I think it's a damn shame that so many in the media are choosing to downplay the plight of those hostages who are being held with absolutely no justification. They can continue some narrative that this is all somehow Israel's fault, when I've been going blue in the face for 2 years saying this is not a war that Israel wanted or started.
Indeed. And again, those images, and we've been showing those images on screen, we had to put a warning up for those who are watching them on our YouTube page. They are absolutely horrific. I mean, again, as you say, you know, one of those men, Rom, he's too weak to even move from his bed. I mean, and you need to see the pictures of these vibrant, beautiful, young, fit men before they were taken. It is extraordinary. And so... just so little attention to this. Now, in the last few weeks, we've had a lot of attention in this media, in British media and around the world.
Julia, Hamas is doing this because it knows it can get away with it.
Exactly.
Hamas is doing this because it knows it can get away with it.
Well, exactly. We've had a lot of attention on children who are hungry, starving, skeletal pictures of children. Now, I know you've been following you on social media. Some of these have been completely exposed. I mean, one of the children who was on the front page of the Express, was a child who was actually in Italy, been in Italy for the last few months, because sadly has a congenital problem. There has been an issue in terms of a lack of aid getting in to Gaza. Lots of criticism, Benjamin Netanyahu, but so much the criticism from the West is based on but you need to give Hamas what they want. You need to get those hostages released, and then you need to get out and end the war in Gaza. Would you support that?
This is not a time to throw Hamas a lifeline. Israelis are debating the impossible dilemma. On the one hand, we have to get the hostages back. On the other hand, we have to stop Hamas taking hostages ever again. Because if the war ends with Hamas still in power, it's only a matter of time until they can run across the border again, break into people's bedrooms, take children and snatch them back into Gaza.
And they've said they will do that. They have said they would do that every single day.
And they've said they will do it again and again. Exactly. And that's why even Israelis who say, look, give Hamas whatever they want, pay the ransom, say, and then we have to go back to fighting Hamas afterwards because there's no way that we can live next to this terrorist regime. So Israelis are facing this very difficult question of what price, what ransom we can pay for the hostages
now that's
release.
The thing.
And the tragedy is now the tragedy is now Hamas doesn't want to deal at all.
No.
Because it's using the hostages not only as bargaining chips to survive this war, but as pawns to psychologically terrorize Israeli society.
And they'll get a Palestinian state, they believe. I don't think it'll actually happen even in my lifetime, frankly, at this point. But they think they're on the way to get it without doing that.
Is telling them to keep going.
But this is the interesting thing. Okay, so Britain and America and others have a very, very clear policy. We do not negotiate with terrorists. We do not pay ransoms for hostages. And yet they are demanding that Netanyahu and the Israelis pay a ransom for hostages and that they do negotiate with terrorists. Now, what you can understand, that even Qatar walked away, and they're funding Hamas, for goodness sake. Even Qatar walked away from the negotiating table as one of the parties in the recent weeks because Hamas' demands were so unreasonable. Israel is paying, sending hundreds and hundreds of convicted prisoners and terrorists back to Gaza in return for each one of their hostages they are getting back, even for dead bodies, extraordinarily. And yet we're told that Hamas are basically saying, unless Israel agree, major releases and every single IDF soldier out of Gaza, full stop, and never coming back, they will not release those hostages. Is that anything that forget Netanyahu, whether people like him or not, corruption charges, whatever, is that anything that any reasonable person could ever agree to?
Yeah, that's a great point. I heard an interview, I think it was the British business secretary speaking on the BBC. Who was asked about whether there would be any conditions. And he said, Hamas is a terrorist group and we don't negotiate with terrorists. And this is just a classic case of do as I say, not as I do. Yeah. When in the next sentence he can call for Israel to negotiate a ceasefire. with the terrorists.
Yeah.
The fact is, whoever is in power in Israel is going to have to deal with the threat of Hamas, whose goal is the destruction of the state of Israel. You know, October 7th was not just a terror attack. It was the opening shot of a regional war against Israel. What Hamas was expecting on October 7th was to pull Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iran, all the other proxies in the region.
Well, they did try.
An all-out attack on every front. They tried, and they spectacularly screwed up the timing. But that was the Iranian regime's plan, to use Hamas to launch an all-out regional war that would lead to the collapse of the state of Israel. And whoever is in power in Israel is going to have to deal with the fact that there is a jihadi terrorist group in Gaza that is sworn to Israel's destruction. And so even those who are saying, get the hostages out now, end the war, pay the ransom, give Hamas what it wants, are also saying, and then eventually we'll have to go back and fight Hamas at a later date. No one in Israel thinks we can get a ceasefire with Hamas staying there. And this is really important, because when world leaders are saying Hamas can have no role in the future of Gaza, and also there must be an immediate ceasefire. Well, an immediate ceasefire means leaving Hamas in power. So how about, instead of paying lip service, you help us and give us some creative ideas on how we can remove Hamas from power? Because, you know, world leaders, British leaders can't say Hamas must lay down its arms, it must relinquish power. And what's the or else?
And every single world leader, including Keir Starmer and Donald Trump or Joe Biden before him, or everyone else, Emmanuel Macron, they need to ask themselves, if the same had happened to us on the same scale as happened to Israel on October the 7th, 2023, what would we be doing now? And I tell you what, we wouldn't be negotiating with the people who did it. Elon Levy, thank you so much. He's the host of the Israel State of a Nation podcast. Thank you so much. Sam Armstrong, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, why is it that we expect Israel, and only Israel, to accept things that no other nation in the history of humanity has ever been asked to accept? And those scenes, they were redolent of the Holocaust. I fully believe,
deliberately so.
I fully believe that was the intention. That was the display. And Hamas was taunting them. And why shouldn't it taunt them, Julia? Because they conducted a literal pogrom on the people of Israel just over a year ago. And what have they got in return? What have they got in return for it? Everything they ever asked for and more. We are fools. We are fools, and we have played. I don't think
it's foolish. I think it's immoral. I no longer think it's just naivety on the part of our government and many of world leaders. I think it's much more sinister than that.
Well, it's all right, because we're bringing 300 of them plus their families.
Can we talk? Can we talk about that? Actually, just very briefly. Yeah, I mean, actually, we'll talk about it more after 12 as well. But yeah, bringing 300,000 people to 300. What was I saying? 300.
Well, we've
already had a few dozen come over for private health treatment, again, negotiated visas, but we're talking about 300 children with their parents
and
siblings, and then of course they'll be bringing second cousins. They're going to come here. The answer to any of those children and families leaving this country after treatment, zero.
None of them will ever go back.
And they will be bringing their entire families with them. What's wrong with treating these kids in Qatar? We can pay for it.
And if you are sat at the moment and you're waiting for a knee-op or a hip-hop or any surgery, any treatment on the NHS of any variety, you are going to go back to the back of the queue to wait for these people. These are people to whom we owe nothing. It's got nothing to do with us whatsoever. This is yet another bung from Keir, it's another bung from Keir Starmer to his constituents in Muslim parts of the country.
Absolutely. I want to talk more about that after 12. 11:51 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. They're going to be talking about why your plane journeys on holiday are going to cost you even more thanks to net zero. That's up next. This is Talk.
A particular journalist at our friends at The Sun, Tom Bryden, has test-driven a load of fish and chip meals across the country, and he joins me now. Tom Bryden, wow, are you 25 stone?
I wasn't until last week.
What have you done and why did you do this? This is brilliant.
So it's actually a really interesting reason. Obviously, we all know we like fish and chips. Everybody likes it. But who likes it the most in the country? Well, it turns out there was a study and it found out Scarborough has 93 fish and chip shops.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:54 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, joined now by Chris Morrison. He's the Environment Editor at the Daily Sceptic. A very, very good morning to you.
Hi there, Julia.
As always, I've left far too little time for this stuff. We always just get far too caught up in the conversation, but everyone will be involved in this conversation. If you want to go on a summer holiday with your family, you may find you're going to be spending more than 50 quid more in the next few years, not because of inflation or anything like that, but because of our good old friend net zero. Tell us why.
Well, that's just the good news. The bad news, of course, is they want you to stop flying altogether, and so this is really a first step. It's to do with inserting sustainable fuels into jet fuel, which of course it leads to enormous expenses. It's basically ethanol, which we have to grow in wheat fields and all that sort of thing. They're putting in these new regulations from this year. The Climate Change Committee, which is this sort of so-called independent body run by Ed Miliband and co, is on record as saying that we want to reduce air traffic by increasing the price, basically, and this is all part of it. This will increase the price, these people, you talk about how sensible they are. They're, at the same time that they want a new runway at Heathrow, they're trying to suggest that basically put in all these things to stop us flying.
But again, with these rules, it's like the not buying a diesel or a petrol car, but not actually owning a car at all, not being able to park it anywhere or afford to drive it anywhere, making flights too expensive. And again, as you say, the Climate Change Committee, in their actual official government reports, they've been around for a long time. They state openly what will be necessary for us to hit our net zero targets by 2050 will involve us, driving less, flying less, eating less meat, eating less dairy, and having our lives curtailed an awful lot. But again, they always assume these limitations, they won't impact them because, of course, they will be able to afford those more expensive flights. They just don't want, the rest of us to be able to afford to fly because they don't think it's actually a good idea that ordinary, hard-working families can afford a week in Spain. They kind of despise those people, don't they?
It's a massive punch down on whatever they call the working class there, or the poorer people in this country. You and I have grown up in a position, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, where we've seen enormous increases in our ability to travel.
It's amazing. We went on holiday to Cornwall, and that was considered far-flung when I was a kid.
Oh, well, we went to Camber Sands and Pontins, and that was a wonderful week out down on the Kent coast, of course. We live in a society, as I say, not just that we benefited by this enormous growth in travel, the educational possibilities, the great holidays, we can go and see other cultures. They're out to destroy it. Because, as you say, there are too many people, polluting Ferenguruli and Benidorm and all these nice places, nice fishing villages that,
But that's the thing. They think they're travellers. The rest of us are just tourists. They're those people. But this is the thing. You see people might go, oh, it's only 50 quid, it's not that bad. This is always the start. That's like the congestion charge. It's only this much, or this charge for that, or for parking here. Every time I have to park my car, I get a thing, and the cost will be £4, for 3 minutes, plus a £1.50 surcharge because you're a bad person and you've got a diesel car. I mean, they all but say it. You can hear it in the tone of the electronic voice. But there are just charges after charges after charges, and it all adds up for families who are already scraping by with, the energy bills. Again, that's largely down to net zero policies, whether it's subsidies or just relying on unreliable, expensive renewables. Our cost of living is going up. Just to live a nice life, to do the things that people work hard for, is going up. And it's a deliberate policy. It's not an accident. It's not an afterthought. It's part of the policy.
And they're all Mickey Mouse schemes. They're all inferior schemes. I mean, we have perfectly good jet fuel oil. It's a natural energy of the earth, which we draw down from the earth, which was, of course, what was CO2 in the atmosphere. And it's a natural energy that's efficient, cheap, and has enabled these enormous increases in living standards. And they want to reduce it by, they'll be growing wheat. And now the problem with growing wheat for ethanol, which is what it basically is that there's lots of other uses for the land. First of all, they're having a real go at the farmers because they don't like farmers very much. So they're putting taxes on what is essentially not a capital asset, but actually a lifestyle necessity, land. Then, of course, they're making it so that they're giving huge subsidies to solar farms so that farmers are tempted to sell the land because they can't make it from growing crops. Solar farms, and then they're bringing in regulations that say we have to rewild 10, 50, 20%. We have to let the beavers dam the rivers.
Don't stand a chance, and now you're going to be growing our aviation fuel when we've already got some. It is quite bizarre, isn't it? And again, it's all about our lives being less than, smaller and more expensive, all due to net zero. But let's not blame Ed Miliband. This is Keir Starmer. It was all the Tory Prime Ministers before them. Boris Johnson was terrible on this as well. Chris Morrison, you do fantastic work at the Daily Sceptic. I do encourage you to sign up to their website. It's absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. Coming up next, the news, and then plenty more to come.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or you're connected to us, it is, as always, fabulous to have your company. Lots more to talk about on the show. And don't forget, if you miss anything, you can go to my YouTube page. You've got no excuse for not finding it. You go to YouTube. I don't know how to do it. I've got my dad doing the Google. Still makes me laugh. Every day still makes me laugh. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show is what it's called. So you can find it. Then you can hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, Keir Starmer facing something of a backlash, what a surprise, from Labour MPs and anyone with a moral conscience and any sanity over his decision to recognise a Palestinian state after Hamas praised the move as one of the fruits of October the 7th. Plus, the government vowing to push for a major new crackdown on people smuggling gangs, investing, they say, £100 million in border security. Oh, come on, guys. Just one more crackdown on people smuggling. Is this going to be the one that finally works? Oh, by the way, hasn't worked so far. Official figures lately have just shown that more than 25,000 people have arrived on small boats so far in 2025. Plus, we're going to talk about the prison officer who was sacked during his training after refusing to refer to basically a man identifying as if he were a trans woman as she or her. Army veteran David Toshak's aged 50, and he told a safeguarding workshop he would not be comfortable using a transgender inmate's preferred gender pronouns. He wanted to use the correct ones. Not unreasonable, you might think. We'll be talking about that. Plus, government records show that asbestos has killed 9 times more military veterans than there were British victims of the Taliban during the Afghan campaign, highlighting the dire state of Britain's military accommodation. Bearing in mind that accommodation is good enough for our veterans, good enough for our serving armed forces, definitely not good enough for the asylum seekers. They get 3- and 4-star hotels. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of that, all of that, and particularly about the government's latest major new crackdown on people smuggling gangs with £100 million of your and my hard-earned money in a boost for border security. What's it going to go on this time? Oh, does it really matter? Does it really matter what it goes on? They could spend it on teddy bears. For all we know, it still won't make a difference if you've got the pull factor of once you get here, you're going to get given a hotel. 3-star, 4-star, 1-star, either way, it is a damn sight better than living in a camp in Calais, is it not? And you're going to be given maybe a mobile phone, you're going to get NHS treatment, you're going to get given freebies to the cinema, you're going to get given food. And by all means, steal a bike and then you can work as a delivery driver for, illegally on the black market for food to takeaway companies. And then you get to keep the money and or give some of that money to the people who you paid from the smuggling gangs. And by the way, you're never ever going to be deported realistically, even if you're found not to be legitimate, which most of you aren't. You're not ever going to actually leave the country. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter what they spend that £100 million on, does it? Because the pull factors are always going to be there. And if people want to come here, there's always going to be a smuggling gang member who's willing to smuggle them here. So tell us your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1 standard network rate message. Lots of messages still coming in on that. Sam Armstrong, I'm delighted to say, still joins us. He's a commentator and all-round sane man. Sam, we talked a lot about this today, but it is still mind-blowing. And you were saying, literally every Monday, we get these sort of embargoed announcements. So on Sunday, I think, here's the headline for Monday morning. And it's getting embarrassing now. I mean, Tories did it, stopping the boats, not. They went up and up, smashing the gangs. I mean, we all knew it was laughable. Yep. We thought at least the Tories, or at least some of them, might vaguely actually want to stop the boats. Yep. I don't think Keir Starmer or Yvette Cooper or anyone else they put out even vaguely... I don't think they even think it's a problem. I think they genuinely believe, from my conversations with them and things they've said and done previously, they're worried about losing their seats to Reform at the next election. So they're worried about doing it. But in terms of what they actually say to each other in their private WhatsApp groups and at their dinner parties, at the breakfast table with their families, they really don't think there's a problem with all these people coming over here illegally. They actually don't think it's a problem. And they think the people, especially the women and children even, who are outside the Bell Hotel in Epping or the Britannia Hotel or the Thistle Hotel, the Barbican, that they are just ghastly, racist, xenophobic bigots who are stirring up trouble.
Julia, I've never had much truck with the Labour Party, but I came of age during the Blair period, didn't really like them then. But I have always had in my heart this view that the Labour Party did serve a purpose. It was the voice of the working people of this country, that it was there to stand up for the working man that went out for work, often had a bad deal from their bosses in the factories and all the rest of it. They knew who their people were and they wanted to stand up for them. And I wouldn't have voted for Michael Foot or Neil Kinnock or any of these people, but they knew who they were there to represent and they were doing it. This lot look at British working class people that are expressing concerns about the falling living standards that they are going through. Working people, and they view them with not just disdain, but a degree of disgust.
Yes.
A degree of shame, contempt, embarrassment. The Labour Party, the supposed voice of working people in this country, is embarrassed about the working classes. And that is an almighty betrayal. They were there. They literally were founded to stand up for these people. So is it any wonder that working people in this country are growing more and more upset? And Angela Eagle can go on the telly and with a nasally voice, she can say,
we don't have to. Well, okay,
anger doesn't get you anywhere. She does have a silly voice, right? She does.
She's not a very convincing.
She is not a very convincing voice. She can say anger doesn't get you anywhere, but these working people, these people of this country that have gone to work every single day, have tried their best, have tried voting for parties that promised they would do something, they haven't done it, so no wonder they're angry.
And again, and every time I talk to people who are again ordinary law-abiding people again who've never even had a parking ticket, and when I say to them, I think we might be heading for some dangerous territory, and to a man and woman they say, good. Because we need to have that wake-up call, and that is a terrible scenario to be in. Well, look, let's talk about this and lots of other topics as well with Baroness Kate Hoey. She's an independent peer, former Labour MP, and joins us right now. Good afternoon to you, Kate.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Well, what did you make of, another Monday, another major new crackdown on people smuggling gangs?
Well, it just seems like they feel that every now and again, if they announce something new, something vaguely relating to migrants, that will kind of stop people feeling angry and concerned.
It's sort of look over here. Don't look at those asylum seekers on the boats or the people committing crimes. Look over here.
And every single initiative that they've sort of announced has been pretty meaningless. And the other thing that really worries me is this idea that they're now going to speed up the dealing with some of these migrants and asylum seekers and they've taken on a lot more staff to do that. Now, that worries me because I don't know what training they're getting. I don't know what they're told. And, there is this genuine worry, I think, that there might just be, it's much easier if you just tick a box and say, OK, you can come in.
Yes.
And, of course, once that happens, then not only is it costing us what it's already cost us, but it's going to cost us huge amounts more because they'll then be entitled to everything else.
Well, exactly. And this is the thing. There is actually a record, and we're often told, well, a huge percentage of these people, we say, they're economic migrants, they're illegal, they don't have a right to be here. And then the left will point to this, like, no, actually, when you actually look at the appeals, huge number of these people get to stay. But actually, what a lot of this is either under very, very spurious human rights grounds, like, or my Albanian son doesn't want to eat Albanian chicken nuggets, or a paedophile getting to stay because of he has his children. I mean, as if they benefit from having him around, and all those awful cases. But there's also people who are not granted asylum, but they are granted basically indefinite leave to remain. They're basically told they can stay, but they're not granted asylum because there's no chance of getting rid of them. And then the idea is, I think the government's view will be, well, they're no longer on the asylum backlog. They're no longer making appeals and costing money. They're no longer people we have to deport or whatever. People will go, oh, well, that problem's being solved. What they do is they disappear into society. And we go, well, we're not paying for them in a hotel anymore, but we're still paying for their accommodation because, bizarrely, these people are not all high earners and they're going to be needing accommodation. And what a surprise, they're foreign and they go to the top of the housing list.
They will, exactly. That's what I was going to say. They will all be put on the housing list, and we know just how long housing waiting lists are, and people waiting with their families for years to get somewhere decent. So all of this is adding up to, I think, what we're seeing now, quite spontaneous protests.
But you say spontaneous. I mean, I don't think they're being mostly. I mean, there's some. They're not being organised by them. They're genuinely local people concerned about, allegations. A lot of this stuff is live criminal charges. But, you know, again and again, we've got, you know, girls being raped, alleged to be the asylum seekers. We've got a 12-year-old girl being raped and alleged charges against 2 asylum seekers in a local place, and a girl, a 10-year-old, being abducted. And again, arrest as the person who's alleged to have committed this crime, an asylum seeker. You know, these aren't one-offs. These are just the ones we know about. There will be others, and of course they have to go through the full course of the justice system. But people are understandably concerned. But do you think there is kind of a change in the feel, and that people now feel emboldened and they feel they've got no choice but to stand up?
Yeah, I think all the attempts by government and by other bits of the media to kind of say that anyone who was out protesting was some kind of racist and far right. You just have to look at those mums that were out over the weekend in Canary Wharf, and you know, the fact that they were all cheerfully and singing, and they were just there to show that they were concerned. Now, clearly, we can't have people coming along to those protests just to cause trouble. But the police could deal with that. They could arrest them. They never seem to want to stop people from either side, you know, either pro or anti, who do kick up and actually do something. They don't seem to do that. And the other thing that really upsets me about this government is that they just won't be honest. They won't even say, oh, yes, we know that the majority of these migrants coming in are not asylum seekers. Yeah. You know, they won't admit to it, and they're terrified of kind of being in any way upsetting their hard left, who think that, you know, there should be open borders, basically. I think that's probably what a lot of the Labour MPs actually would like to see.
Yeah.
Everyone.
And that's the thing. Nigel Farage, the Reform leader, he's had a press conference today, and he's talked about the rising public anger about this issue. Now, he was, of course, when he first was, you know, out there in the Channel on a boat pointing to all these boats, the shocking imagery. I mean, we've been shocked previously by people sort of being taken out of lorries and a huge number of asylum seekers in the backs of lorries. But I think these young men on these boats, I think, really horrified people. And again, everyone just shouted, well, from the government, left and right, you know, far right, just keep shouting far right at him. But, you know, the reality is the public were going, I don't think this is a good idea. And no, when the Treasury Minister, Darren Jones, says they're mostly women and children, we've got eyes. We can see that they're mostly fighting-age young men.
I think all of that is now being, you know, people are literally just ignoring what the government are saying on this issue. Yeah. And, you know, they really need to get a grip, because, you know, no one wants to see protests that land up with violence. But, you know, people are so angry and so frustrated all over the country. It's not just in London.
No, exactly. So it's absolutely around the country. You know, you were a Labour MP. You knew a lot of these people who are now in government. You were always a little bit of an independent soul anyway on quite a lot of issues. But you know, you served in government. What do they really think behind the scenes? Because the conversations I've had with Labour people on and off air, I think a lot of the Tories, they kind of, not all of them, but a lot of them wanted to do something about it, but just didn't really have the guts to do what was necessary in terms of actually being hard-nailed about it. And they're too worried about the headline in The Guardian or the BBC to actually do the job that the British people want. But what do the Labour people actually really think about this?
Well, I do think that there's a lot of very, very new MPs who have been handpicked and chosen to be loyal. And they are not going to speak out. But, you know, some of them in those areas, particularly where there are hotels where there are being protests, I mean, they must begin to feel, look, there is something wrong about this. We've got to speak out now.
But what about Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner? Do they look at this and think, yeah, it's just far right bigots, there's nothing wrong? Or do they actually recognise it's probably not a good idea to have tens of thousands of illegal migrants living freely in our communities?
I don't think Keir Starmer does at all, because I think Keir Starmer is just first and foremost a lawyer. He sees everything through the eyes of international law and the European Court of Human Rights and all of that. I think you know, the Deputy Prime Minister actually probably does, because she comes from a background where she must be talking to people on the ground, and she must know that what Labour is doing is certainly, you know, throwing money at something that's not actually going to solve it. And you know, unless we do, I think more and more people are beginning to realise that unless we actually take back the independence from the European Court of Human Rights, we're never really going to be able to grasp this, because you mentioned it about the courts now. They just follow European law. European courts, the human rights law, and they won't even send back hardened criminals because they might actually, get a slap on the wrist when they get
it's properly insane. And you've seen the outcry of the British media, and indeed a lot of the mainstream media in the United States as well, at what Donald Trump's doing. Right, okay, there needs to be proper procedure. You need to make sure that people are who they say they are. But for the deportation of illegal migrants, but he's been here 15 years. I don't care. If you're in a country illegally, you get deported. Why are people outraged by this?
I think what worries me too, Julia, is that there are a lot of very hard-working migrants who came here legally many years ago, have settled in, have been involved themselves in the local community, have got small businesses, and they are going to end up suffering if we don't sort this out.
Absolutely,
that is very, very wrong.
Absolutely. I'll tell you how we're going to sort this out, though, and it's a little ugly head appeared again this morning, as it always does, because we know that for Labour, as a general rule, the solution to most problems is digital ID cards. And Radio 4 were talking about that this morning. They love it. This idea that, but if everybody has a digital ID card, then we'll know who's allowed to legally be here and to legally work and not legally work. I mean, they're having an absolute laugh, aren't they, if they genuinely think that the people who are working as Uber riders or delivery riders or working in a car wash or a nail bar, that they are going out of their way to make sure that those people have got the correct ID, can work here. I've employed people before. You can easily check whether someone can work here or not. They'll have paperwork that shows you it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they don't. Most of the people who are employing people who are illegally working don't really care. And I can't see that ID cards would actually make a difference because, who's going to police the fact that they even check the ID cards? And anyway, most of those people, we don't even know which country they came from. Never actually get them an ID card. I just think ID cards is another way of the state gradually getting a grip over everything that we do. And we're seeing that with online things being taken offline now with the new legislation. So I opposed ID cards originally, and I can't see that there's any way that would solve the real issue and the problems that we've got.
No, indeed. I mean, again, you know that, I know that. It won't stop them doing it, though. Can I ask you about another issue we were discussing a little bit earlier, involving the plan to bring 300 very sick children from Gaza to the treatment on the NHS here. We've already had some children who've been brought over privately funded and long time to get visas to be treated here in the UK. Now the government is planning to bring over 300 children to be treated on the NHS. They're obviously allowed to bring a family member or two, probably a sibling or two, as well as their parents. What do you make of that decision when we have huge numbers of people on waiting lists, including children, in the NHS, and we have many countries in the Middle East very close to Gaza, countries like, say, Qatar, who have been happily funding Hamas for many years and supporting them, who have fabulous first-class hospital facilities. If we really wanted to help these children, could we not pay for them to go to Qatar rather than flying them over here or any other country in the Middle East? Do you think it's a good idea?
I think it's probably got the right intentions, although I think some of the intentions are in terms of government to make their own backbenchers feel that they're doing something even more about Palestine. I think you're absolutely right. They will bring their families, and then there will be very great difficulty in ever getting them to leave. And I've never understood, well, I do understand why so many of the neighbouring Arab countries, first of all, don't want to take any refugees from Gaza. And certainly now it sounds like they're not particularly interested in taking young children in particular who need really, good medical care. So our government, instead of just sort of saying plucking a figure out, saying 300, they should be actually working on those other governments to say, why are you not taking some of these really, really badly injured children?
Well, also, here's the thing. If Hamas didn't place their rocket launchers and their tunnels entrances under hospitals and base themselves on hospitals, then maybe the hospital care would be better in Gaza right now, and those children wouldn't need to be flown anywhere. But we know perfectly well those children, they'll come here. They are going to push other other British people, British children, further down the NHS waiting list because, you know, these guys, these surgeons think, oh, they're not going to be operating on a Sunday at 3 a.m. They're going to be operating the normal time. That's an operation that's going to be delayed for a British child. And then the widow family, and then, of course, all of their other extended family members will eventually have a right to come here because someone madly thought that if you just knew someone in England and you spoke a bit of English, you could have a right to come to this country. I mean, the British public... I mean, we want to be nice, we want to be kind. I'm happy, oh, if we're going to help, lovely. It's all going to make lots of donations to Médecins Sans Frontières or International Red Cross or whatever, so that they could be flown to Qatar. But, I mean, I don't want a single one of those children or their family members in this country. We are talking about a radicalised, dangerous population. Yes, the civilians are also dangerous. I don't want any of them in this country. And if that makes me a bad person, I don't care.
Well, I think, Julia, you probably speak for a very, very substantial number of people in the country, because once you start this, I mean, where does it end? Yeah. If we take 300, the next thing there'll be somebody saying, well, why aren't we taking 500? Yep. Why aren't we taking 1,000? Yep. And of course, there are terrible things happening all over the world that, for some reason, don't get the publicity that what's happening in Palestine does. I mean, I looked recently at what was happening in Syria and those appalling things of Christians. Even in Nigeria, a Commonwealth country, where Christians in a church just recently were literally all killed just overnight, you know, just like that. Yep. And nobody talks about that. And for some reason, we've got this obsession at the moment about Palestine. And it is awful what's happening. And there are folks on all sides. But ultimately, Hamas is to blame. And until Hamas is destroyed, I don't see how Keir Starmer can possibly say that he would recognise a Palestinian state, because it's
quite absurd, isn't it? It's quite... Well, look, I mean, I also want to ask you one final topic back here at home, and that is two-tiered justice. We've had a teacher. I mean, there's some extraordinary stories about two-tiered justice. We've had a teacher who has been sacked for criticising two-tiered justice in the Lucy Connolly case, saying that what she wrote was wrong, but that she shouldn't have been imprisoned for it. Now, I was thinking, oh, well, was this teacher giving their political opinion in a classroom full of children? That seems a bit weird. No, this was a teacher who gave their opinion online, on their own private social media account. And the reason why it came to the notice of the authorities at the school he worked for was because his own union, the National Education Union, flagged it up, and he has now been sacked for giving his opinion on a major story on social media. What do you make of that? Well,
it is shocking, and I'm very glad that the Free Speech Union, which I would suggest anyone who's listening to this programme or watching it should actually join the Free Speech Union, because it's going to be needed more and more. And I think it is shocking. And what is even more shocking is that it looks like the trade union is actually not even beginning to think of defending its own member, but is actually the one that is attacking its own member. And, you know, if we're getting to this stage where someone is actually, you know, sacked from their public job because of something they've said, which wasn't threatening anyone, which wasn't threatening violence, which was simply saying they thought perhaps this sentence was too long, which I do as well, and so does many, many people. I just think we're getting into a really... a situation where, you know, we don't want to overblow it, but we really are getting into a kind of state-run kind of police state, which is just shocking.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Baroness Kate Hoey, always a voice of reason. Thank you so much for joining us. Independent peer, former Labour MP. Sam Armstrong joining us now. Sam, you're a commentator, but you also do a lot of work with the Free Speech Union. This concerns this teacher, Simon Pearson. He teaches at Preston College. And again, I mean, there was a complaint from a representative of the National Education Union at the college, who found his online post had the potential to bring it into disrepute. And he was sacked at the college. I mean, for something he wrote on social media expressing a perfectly, I would say, majority opinion in this country about a case. He wasn't bringing politics inappropriately into the classroom.
No. And look, let's forget a minute that I think this is a fairly deliberate attempt to send a signal to people that you shouldn't be talking about these issues. Let's just deal with the fact that he was reported by the National Education Union, because I think this goes to the heart of so much what we've been talking today about, which is unions used to be there to stand up for working people, for their members, their representatives. Instead, what they have become over the past 10, 15, 20 years is a kind of tool of this new elite that are here.
Policing our language, policing our views. this.
What the hell is a union doing shopping in a teacher to management saying, sack this person? That's literally the opposite of what a union is meant to do.
Yeah.
A union is meant to be there to stand up for you, to help you, to represent you in a situation like that.
And it's just none of their business.
And is it any wonder that so many traditional union members are running along to the Free Speech Union and saying, look, if it's me, the thing I'm most likely to get in trouble for is for saying something, for expressing my common sense beliefs.
I've never been a member of the National Union for Journalists for the very reason. It's basically a socialist organisation. They do too much politicking. They're not there to actually represent their members.
But it's really, really dangerous because working people are at the bottom of the ladder in this country. They don't necessarily have the biggest voice. They do need people to stand up for them, and they have been betrayed systematically by their politicians, by their unions.
Bearing in mind the National Education Union didn't even stand up for the Batley Grammar School teacher. Never made a statement, never said a word, never did anything, but he's still in hiding with his family. What, 4 years on? 5 years on? Never said a word about it. Don't care. A teacher in France, Samir Paty, had his head cut off. You know, he literally died as well. The same threats were made to this teacher for doing his job. Not a word. Not bothered whatsoever, but they're probably still campaigning for kids to wear masks in school classrooms because they're lunatics. Every teacher, I mean, you should not be a member of that union. You really shouldn't. There are so many other teachers' unions that are much saner. But yeah, it's just extraordinary. Again, there's never any penalty for it, is there? And the key thing is there, every time there's a story like this, the Free Speech Union stands up for them and tries to fight, and they win their case. They always win. Your victory rate is superb. But it's the impact on millions of other people that just says, shh, don't make trouble, keep quiet. And every time people keep quiet, this problem gets worse. That's why everyone has to stop keeping quiet. We did it over the trans madness. We're doing it gradually over net zero. We did it over lockdown. We're going to do it over all of this, the two-tier justice issue as well. 12:28's time. Up next, get to your messages. This is Talk.
British courts. Well, it was one thing, I think, for Keir Starmer to be a disaster domestically. That much was almost to be expected. This is a man who, before coming into number 10, said that he preferred Davos to Parliament. But he's failing by his own standards because he seems to consider himself this great international statesman. And yet you had that embarrassing press conference with Donald Trump last week. You then had all the equivocating over Palestinian statehood, only for him to then capitulate to his restless backbenchers. And now we just look so staggeringly naive, Mark.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. 12:32 is the time. Let's get some calls in. 0344 499 1000 on all the big topics we've been talking about. Natasha is in Brighton. Very, very good afternoon to you. What do you want to say, Natasha? Hello, Natasha, are you there?
Yes.
Hello. What do you want to... I know you wanted to talk about Hamas, didn't you? What do you want to say?
Well, I just want to say I've managed to compose myself now since seeing those videos. And I just want to say, what the hell has happened to the world and the West? It seems to have gone utterly insane and lost its moral compass. We used to know what was right and wrong, but seeing the videos of those young Israelis is so disgusting, it almost breaks your soul. I can't describe the depth of my loathing for this government and socialism in general, because it's destroying the country. And Starmer is wicked, allowing the hostages to rot like that while appeasing Hamas to placate his own, Muslim vote. I mean, it's just morally reprehensible. I don't know how you report it every day and cope with it, Julia.
I genuinely, I was just so horrified last week when he announced it. I'm just so unbelievably horrified. Nothing surprises me anymore, to be honest with you. Nothing.
I know. I mean, I've got nothing left to say, Julia.
No,
it's just so
I'm with you all the way. I completely feel you. I can feel it, G. Natasha, thank you for that. Let's go to Grace, who is in London. Grace, you want to talk about actually something we were talking about an hour ago, about Bonnie Blue and that Channel 4 documentary.
Yeah, although the last caller asked how it is that we've come to lack morality here in the West and not know what's right and wrong. And one of the things that was said by your guest earlier in talking about Bonnie Blue was we're changing what we think of as a human being, how we see humanity. And you talked about people selling their souls. And I think that is a fundamental shift. I mean, as mad as it sounds, I came to conclude while I was studying science that there's evidence for a creator. And so I kind of think that there's a God who created us and gave us souls. And I think that for a long time people felt resentful of the idea that he gave us some kind of rules about sex, or that there were people in churches who were too judgmental about other people in an un-Christ-like way. And so they kind of rebelled against that.
Kind of went way too... It swung way too far in one direction.
Exactly. But in reality, a parent gives rules often because they love their kids. And I think that when God gave us some guidelines about sex, it wasn't because he hates human beings, but because he probably knew best, although I know most people don't believe in him. But I think sometimes some restrictions are actually for our...
Yeah, well, but again, are they restrictions or are they good? Like, I'm a fundamentalist atheist, so I don't believe in any God. I don't need a God to give me those rules. But I understand a lot of people do. But it seems to me it's just about what is good for you. And again, young women who are saying that, having 1,000 men put their penises inside me in a day is no different to pouring 1,000, pints of beer for those same men, because it's still using my body. I mean, they're lying to themselves and to us. It's crazy. Grace, so much appreciate your call. Thank you very much indeed. 12:35 is the time. We're going to get a quick break, and then we're going to be talking to a former prison governor about a prison officer who's been sacked after refusing to call, basically, a man who claims he's a trans woman, she or her. And are we facing more two-tier justice after a violent so-called anti-racist protester avoided jail after attacking police? Oh, but by the way, Lucy Connolly still behind bars for writing those hurty words. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. 12:38 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong's still with me. Can't wait to hear what you have to say about what my next guest has to say. She is Rona Hotchkiss. She's a former prison governor at various different prisons, some involving male prisoners, or some women, and indeed some men and women. Rona, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Lots I want to talk to you about, but in particular about a prison officer. This is Army veteran David Toshak, who was dismissed by GEO Army. They're one of the UK's largest security firms. During a training course, he was about to become a prison officer, having spent years in the Army's medical reserves, and he was basically about to finish the training to become a prison officer, a custody official at the Kirkcaldy Sheriff Court in Fife. When during a training course, he was asked, he didn't just spout his views willy-nilly at people. He was asked about calling a male-born transgender inmate, i.e. a male inmate who was claiming to be a trans woman, using that male inmate's preferred pronouns, she and her. And he said, well, no, he wouldn't do that because he believes in, biological reality. But he would say they or them wherever possible, and he didn't want to cause offence. This was brought up a few times. He was called in to the boss's office and basically told, no, you're off the course, you're not going to have the job, end of, because of your transphobia. What do you make of that as a former prison governor?
Well, it's utterly ludicrous, isn't it? But it's more serious than that because it has real-world consequences and has had for this man. He's lost his job, he's lost a career. He was going to be not a prison officer per se, but a court custody officer. It's the same kind of thing. That's his job gone, his livelihood gone. I don't know. Does he have a family to support? This is absolutely outrageous. You cannot force people to lie. And nobody can be forced to pretend.
Well, they have. I mean, people have been forced to lie, have been forced to pretend. Well, what's interesting, these people said to him, oh, you're in breach of the law. On the contrary, Maya Forstater case established beyond shadow of a doubt after her tribunal went to the Supreme Court. Very, very, very clear that it is it's absurd that it's a belief, but the belief, i.e. the knowledge that there is a biological reality in sex, is protected in law. And it wasn't like he wasn't going up to trans people and berating them. He was saying, in this scenario, I would not be willing to say she or her, but I would say they or them. I'm willing to compromise. But, and that is a protected belief. But also, we've just had the Supreme Court decision, only in April, which said that single-sex spaces had to recognise that single sex was based on biological sex and nothing else. So why would a woman who thinks she's a man be in a man's prison, and why would a man who thinks he's a woman be in a woman's prison? So why would this even come up? By definition, if you're in the male prison estate, you're a man.
Well, it quite simply shouldn't be happening still, and that the Scottish government, because that's who drives this, has not enforced this ruling. It's absolutely outrageous. Now, a custody officer might still come up against someone who calls themselves female when they're male, because it would be possible to do that. If you're a male who calls themselves female, you could still be in a male prison calling yourself that, so they could still come up against that. But you're absolutely right. There's no way it's illegal to hold and express those views. As you quite rightly identified, you wouldn't deliberately go and harass someone because of it, because that's ridiculous behaviour as well. But to hold and express those views, to refuse to tell a lie and insist that you tell the truth. I mean, saying they, them is a pretty decent compromise.
I wouldn't be willing to do that. And I was someone who did use people's preferred pronouns as a matter of courtesy for years, and then realised that you end up having to say her penis was inserted or something during a trial where a woman has been raped and is having to refer to she and her as her male rapist. But the reality is, you'll also know, look, there'll be some people who are, okay, they're not law-abiding, they're behind bars in these scenarios, but actually the rate of which male prisoners who claim to be trans women, i.e., male trans-identifying men, their rate of sexual offending is off the scale. The huge percentage of those men who've been convicted of violent sex acts against women are claiming to be trans. There's some big red neon warning signs there.
Of course there are. I mean, a lot of these people are just manipulative. They're trying to gain system. They're trying to get one over on prison officers. I mean, we people who try to call themselves all kinds of ridiculous names and present officers with ridiculous scenarios just to be able to laugh at them because they've made a fool of them. One tried to change his name by deed poll to God Almighty.
That's quite good.
Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of scenario, and a lot of these people are on the same scale as that. Even for people who believe they are genuinely the other sex, they absolutely are not, and nobody can or should be forced to do that. But I squarely place the blame on Scottish Government for this, Julia.
I mean, the Scottish Government are even more insane than the Westminster Government on this issue. Well, here's the thing. He'll be getting a message from me after the show, I can tell you that. Vanessa Frake, who is a fantastic former prison governor, who we've had on the show many, many times, she has said, and she has just been taken on by Reform as their new justice advisor, that trans women, i.e., trans-identifying men, let's call them what they are, men, should not be automatically barred from women's prisons, and the decisions on housing inmates should be assessed on an individual basis. And this is something that Nigel Farage has been asked about, and he has backed up. He said, I personally never worked in prison, so I can't answer, but I think you'll find the answer is that you'll get from somebody who's worked in prisons. The highest level is, I think, basically it's about risk assessment. So he's talking about individual decisions being made about whether or not a male prisoner can be put inside a women's prison with other female inmates. That, I'm sorry, Nigel Farage, if you're watching or listening, no, no, no. What do you say, Rona?
Completely disagree. I mean, individual risk assessment, it's a nonsense. It is about risk, but it's about the risk that all males pose to women, whether or not they have a background of sexual or physical violence against women. It's about the vulnerability of women. The fact that there are services and situations where women do not want big-penised people.
Big-penised people. I'm going to get a T-shirt with that on. But that's true. It's that simple, especially not just... I mean, in that scenario, a man who genuinely believes he is a woman, I mean, maybe he should just try not to commit a crime. That might help him. He might need to be housed, you know, in solitary for his own protection. If he has the appearance that he might be a woman, that may be the case. But it doesn't give him the right to go into a woman's prison.
Absolutely not. And I don't believe they do need to be kept in solitary confinement, Julia. The prison service is excellent at dealing with all kind of heinous offenders and people who are vulnerable for other reasons. For years and years, they protected gay men when they came out as gay. They've protected bad politicians and bad police officers and bad this, that, and the next thing. People who offend against children, and I'm not putting trans people in that category, but we're talking about vulnerability here. Some of them are vulnerable, some of them are not. That's the prison service's job, to protect these people, and by and large they do it very, very well.
But they don't have to put women prisoners at risk. We know that the vast majority of women behind bars are not behind bars for any violent attacks and have often been victims of abuse themselves. Can I just ask you just finally another story? We've talked a lot about two-tier justice on this show in recent years. Well, mainly because there is two-tier justice, particularly since those riots after the Southport attacks last year. But a left-wing activist called Caroline Lenihan, who's 43. December last year, she assaulted a female officer while being arrested for being drunk and disorderly at a pub in Dorset. She's now avoided jail for the second time after attacking the police officer, having previously escaped prison for assaulting a man at a migrant hotel protest last year. Extraordinarily, two assaults, both convictions, not going to prison. Lucy Connolly, who wrote a horrible tweet, but nevertheless wrote a tweet, didn't attack anybody, didn't leave her home to do anything, still behind bars more than a year on.
Yes, I think what people don't like here is the lack of internal cohesion in sentencing, Julia, and people keep citing sentencing guidelines and so on done by the Sentencing Council. Well, if it results in outcomes like this, they are quite simply wrong. I agree. I thought what Lucy Connolly did was appalling and it deserved some kind of response. On the other hand, I believe that any assault against police officers should carry a mandatory sentence. There should be no community what's going on here. It's disgraceful. We don't protect our emergency services enough, and I include prison staff within that.
Absolutely. Rona, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Do come on again. Rona Hotchkiss, former prison governor of various different prisons. A quick reaction to that from Sam Armstrong, who's still with us in the studio.
Can I just check that nobody has sprinkled some kind of psychoactive substance over Nigel Farage's Weetabix this morning?
Seriously.
I mean, Nigel, really? A bloke with a, dangling participle? Able to waltz into a women's prison on the basis of some risk assessment conducted by some mad civil servant probation officer? Are you joking? Nigel, what on earth is going on? Either you've gone soft or you've gone mad. I mean, goodness me, is there something in the water?
I'm going to message him as soon as we're off air. Just you wait. That's a deal breaker for me. These things are deal breakers for me.
It will cost Nigel votes if he starts going soft on these things.
100% should. We need some sanity, for goodness sake. 12:48 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about asbestos killing more troops than the Taliban during our entire time in Afghanistan. But by the way, that accommodation would not be fit for asylum seekers. They get a 4-star hotel. This is Talk.
Foreign criminals have been vanishing from British courts mid-trial and re-offending under fake names. The former prosecutor talks about turning up for court. You'd start the case, and as often happened, it gets adjourned for lunch. The judge says, "I'll give my ruling back after lunch," and the foreign criminal kind of disappears. And because they've been given giving fake names, there's just no way of tracking them down in the system. So it's pretty astonishing, and it just kind of reveals some of the shambles going on inside our court system.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon. 12:52 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just a few moments. Russell Quirk's going to be here standing in for Ian Collins today, and he'll be taking you through the afternoon. Stay tuned for that. Sam Armstrong's still with me. Now we're joined by Elliot Wilson. He's a writer. He's a senior fellow also for for national security at the Coalition for Global Prosperity, a think tank. Very, very good afternoon to you, Elliot.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Wanted to talk to you really about where we are, international affairs, but also at home here, front page of the Mail today. Asbestos has killed 9 times more military veterans in this country than there were British victims in the military of the Taliban during the entire Afghan campaign. It's causing exposure to deadly material in poor military accommodation, ships, subs, helicopters, and even in tanks. Is causing an average of 89 cases of mesothelioma. I can't pronounce it. The cancer caused by asbestos. This is extraordinary, especially when we're constantly told that, you know, they're upgrading the accommodation. But for years and years and years, our military servicemen and women have been in accommodation that is literally killing them.
It is. I mean, sadly, it's very worrying, but it's not all that surprising. I mean, the problem with asbestos was that for a long time we thought it was this sort of wonder material that was fire retardant. You know, it basically was a safety feature, despite the fact that we've known for now 101 years that it does kill people.
And they did put it everywhere. I mean, it's in tower blocks, it's in schools,
Absolutely.
It's in hospitals, it's everywhere.
And as you say, in tanks and submarines, you know, the army are given gloves made of asbestos to change machine gun barrels. So it is everywhere. And it's very difficult to remove because once you start tearing it apart, it turns into fibres and you worsen the problem. So it's an enormous problem. But then the whole defence housing estate has been a running sore for 20 or 30 years now. And there have been appalling problems of substandard housing and really not enough being done. And it partly goes back to when the Ministry of Defence sold off most of the housing stock in 1995 to a private contractor. That didn't go well. But it's also, I think, you were talking about the emergency services earlier. I think the armed forces, they make do because it's what they do. They are service people. They're there to defend the country and do their job. And if they are being poorly housed, no one likes it. They don't deserve it. But they will.
Well, they can't go on strike about it. Nothing can happen. Exactly. And again, you know, they're kind of the get on with it people. Again, I do find it extraordinary that we've often had the idea of, you know, putting asylum seekers into some of the former military camps. Where they were told no, they're not good enough standard. Even the barge, they were going to be the BBC Stockholm, not good enough for asylum seekers. They gave up on that. A bad publicity, but now they're about to put British servicemen and women into a barge almost identical to the BBC Stockholm because it is good enough for them, which is extraordinary. Look, let's talk about more international affairs just briefly, though, because we've had this sort of war of words between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. And as much as I'm pleased that Vladimir Putin is no longer basically suckering in Donald Trump on issues like Ukraine, big concern that tensions could mount between these two big powers and the moving of US subs and the like, and threats and counter threats. How worried are you about what is going on between those two countries?
It is concerning. I mean, the tweet or rather the post on Truth Social that Donald Trump put out was slightly confusing because he said he was moving submarines to where they're. I mean, he doesn't need to move submarines. There will be US submarines all the time which could hit with nuclear weapons. That's not an issue. So I think it's Donald Trump talking at Putin. It's good that he is no longer, as you say, effectively rolling over and asking Putin what he wants him to do. But typically for Trump, he goes in very aggressively and very bourishly without thinking about the consequences.
But isn't it this week, though? I think it's not Thursday. No, is that, I know that's when more tariffs come in, but I think it's over the next week that we're going to hit that deadline, which the new shorter deadline for Donald Trump to say, well, Putin has to come to the table over a ceasefire in Ukraine.
Yes, 50 days, which became 12 days, which became 10 days, which I suppose is reducing inflation in a way. But the problem is that Donald Trump doesn't really have a clear outcome in mind, except that he would like it all to stop and it to be to his credit. And it's not going to stop because there's no incentive for Putin to stop the war. He's not losing yet, although, you know, Russia... Winning. No, he's not winning at all. But he can keep this going because he's got, you know, hundreds of millions of Russians to feed into Ukraine if necessary. And he still thinks he can achieve some kind of settlement. And he's also, I suspect, worried about what happens if he doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's also a report today, so talking about, you know, World War III, whether it's, you know, Russia and America or it's China invades Taiwan and the West to go to war as well, saying that the government has actually urged Brits to stock up on basic supplies. A shock poll has revealed that 86% of us don't have enough to last us even one day in a crisis. Should we be stockpiling our tinned goods and our batteries and our torches?
This all feels a bit sort of protect and survive 1960s, doesn't it? I mean, I think...
Get under your kitchen table and survive the nuclear bomb.
Yes, if one of your relatives dies, wrap them in tinfoil and put them outside. I think if we do come to a nuclear conflict, not having enough tinned food to get through the week is not going to be the issue.
I think you may have nailed it. Elliot Wilson, he's from the National Security at the Senior Fellow for National Security at the Coalition for Global Prosperity. It's a foreign policy think tank. Sam Armstrong, are you all geared up for World War III?
Well, it's hard to work out. Are we going to face a World War III first, or are we going to face a genuine civil war in this country? I mean, there are now serious people, King's College professors I've seen this week, saying that we are literally staring on the precipice of massive national breakdown if people begin to lose faith in the police. I cannot remember, and I think I say this every year, I cannot remember a time in which our world has seemed more dangerous than it does today. I
think the world is very dangerous, but our country, I think it's more despondency at the moment, but I think it's not a bad thing if people start being angry rather than despondent. Staying within the law, with always say that, but Russell Quirk, what do you make of it? Because Russell Quirk, I'm delighted to say, is in for Ian Collins today.
I am, yes, good afternoon. On in a minute. What do I think of what? The prospect of World War III? I don't know. Or
indeed Civil War.
But Civil War, I think, look, unrest is bubbling, isn't it? As you say, we must keep it peaceful, but yes, the streets are speaking.
Yeah, I think it's good that people are saying, no, we're enough. And again, if we vote and you ignore us again and again and again, then we're going to take to the streets. We will stay peaceful.